Chapter 575. Was high-level World of Warcraft meat tasty? Not really, at least the taste was a bit bad. The meat is a bit tough, bad review. List was very dissatisfied. As a high-level World of Warcraft, the bootleg stork was indeed nutritious. Once it entered his stomach, he could feel hot steam rising from it. Mana constantly nourished his chi, but the taste was not as good as the low-level World of Warcraft Windblade Wolf. It was dry and hard. However, even so, Gort and the other followers still had tears in their eyes. I'm so happy to be able to eat high-level World of Warcraft meat in my life. Thank you, sir. Praise, sir. The meat of the bootleg stork is too chewy. This is the most precious food I've ever eaten. Knight's glory. Only sir can slay high-level World of Warcraft. Although I haven't seen what the bootleg stork looks like, I saw its meat and ate it in my stomach. I'm so satisfied. As long as we keep fighting with Sir, high-level World of Warcraft meat is not an extravagant wish. We can even eat Super World of Warcraft meat. That's right. Sir is the youngest Sky Knight in the country. He will become a Dragon Knight sooner or later. Some followers directly shouted the slogan of Dragon Knight. This was not inappropriate. Dragon Knight was more like a beautiful sustenance. Any knight would always talk about Dragon Knight. Although this picnic was simple, everyone felt happy. Only List was not satisfied with the taste of the bootleg stork meat. The chef also made a purple sand crocodile meat for him. The taste was also not good, the meat was very rough, and he forced himself to swallow it. In fact, the taste of World of Warcraft meat had little to do with the level. Low-level World of Warcraft meat, such as Fire Rabbit and Pink Conch, had a good taste, although the nutrition and mana were slightly lacking. In addition, compared to ordinary livestock meat, World of Warcraft meat was not necessarily superior. Invisible Dragon and Charmander both liked to eat beef, not World of Warcraft meat. Of course, eating World of Warcraft meat was not about taste, so no matter how bad the bootleg stork and purple sand crocodile meat was, he would still eat it. Early morning. Riding the Rainbow Whale Lolth, List went straight to the Flower Town seaside villa. It just so happened that Chi had been staying in the seaside villa for the past few days. List didn't beat around the bush and directly said, Chi, I have a mission for you. Please tell me, Big Brother. I will definitely help Big Brother complete the task. I have a batch of foreign books here. They may have come from the mainland on the other side of the Devil's Sea. A race called the Children of the Sun. List took out the pile of solar language books and placed them on the table. You can study this diary of a descendant of the sun first. There are simple solar language lessons in it. The continent across the Devil's Sea. Chi was surprised. Are there humans living there? I thought the Devil's Sea was the border of the sea. List said, Have you forgotten that I told you that our world might be a planet? If this is the case, then the border of the sea can only be the land, and the border of the land can only be the sea. Therefore, there must be a continent on the other side of the Devil's Sea. We are on the east side of the continent. Then, what if the other side of the Devil's Sea is the west side of the continent? Chi raised a question. List was taken aback. He really hadn't thought about this problem. If the other side of the Devil's Sea was really the west side of the continent, then it was not impossible. Assuming that the planet had only one continent and one ocean, then the Devil's Sea was obviously the only ocean. It was just that it was difficult to cross, which gave rise to all kinds of legends. As for the west side of the continent, it was too far away and information did not circulate. Only a few people knew what was going on there. He could only say awkwardly, It is recorded in some books that the westernmost part of the continent is the Unsetting Radiance Empire. The language used there is an advanced clear language. It is probably not the same language as the solar language. The Unsetting Radiance Empire is not the children of the sun. In short, you can judge for yourself. All right. Chi stroked the paper of the solar language books and said, This paper is so thin. It seems that it is really not produced by the continent's countries. Big Brother, do you want me to learn the solar language and then translate the contents of these books? Chi is so smart. List habitually stroked her blue hair. I found some clues. Do you remember that sunken ship? The box on the ship contained these sun scriptures and some seeds. At present, The seeds have germinated, but their growth is very slow. I think the technique of how to cultivate seeds is hidden in these books. Is that sunken ship from another continent? Yes, according to my speculation, it may not be a ship, but a ship in the sky. Ah, a ship in the sky? There is not enough evidence to support my speculation. You need to find it from this pile of books. By the way, I will transplant the germinated seedlings here. After you find useful clues from the books, you can study them. List simply handed over the matter of cultivating the potion seeds to Achi. He was now getting more and more used to being a hands-off shopkeeper. It was a pity that Achi's feet had not grown out and could not walk normally on land. Otherwise, she could have played a greater role. I really hope that the smoke mission can issue some rewards that can help the sirens grow. He kept thinking in his heart, trying to interfere with his subconscious and pull the threads of fate. The subconscious could not be controlled. He could only interfere with the smoke mission as much as possible by constantly hypnotizing himself, hoping that it would really work. He had to supervise the handling of the seedlings in the glass greenhouse to prevent the servants from damaging the seedlings. Although there were still a large number of seeds stored in the gem space, before the seedlings matured and bore fruit, there would be one less seedling that was damaged. Wow! The thorn sprite, Ella, flew out of the castle and landed on his shoulder, then grabbed his hair and yelled, wanting List to play with it. I'm busy now, Ella. Go play by yourself. List touched Ella's head and motioned it not to make trouble. Wow! Ella flattened her mouth and flew away reluctantly. Back in the castle's worm room, he saw the corn sprite Mickey playing with a group of sprite worms. He rushed up and raised his hand to hit it. Mickey was shocked and flew away. Chirp, chirp. In fact, Ella's hand did not fall, but stopped in midair. Without looking at Mickey, he flew out of the castle and flew to the Garden of Thorns where the worm stalks had been removed. In the Garden of Thorns in Flower Town, there were no fast-growing magic thorns planted, but fast-growing iron thorns. It yelled wow and waved its hand to sprinkle a green light, spawning a patch of thorns. Then it calmed down. It was ready to go back and continue to play with List, but List was no longer in the castle. He escorted the potion seedlings to the seaside villa. Following the vague feeling in its mind, Ella flew directly to the seaside villa. The apprentice knight who followed it could not stop it from entering the seaside villa that had become strange. However, when it arrived, List, who was teaching the giant kelp sprite Parker, had already sensed it and immediately called it. Ella, come and meet me. This is Parker. List motioned for Ella to fall on his shoulder, and then said to Parker, who was standing on the table, Parker, this is Ella. We should coexist peacefully when we meet in the future. Parker bared his teeth, not knowing whether it was a laugh or a threat. Ella, ugly sprite. Chapter 576. Take a deep breath, Ella. Seeing that Ella was about to start sowing magic, List hurriedly stopped her and scolded Parker. Parker, don't use insulting words to your own elves. Parker looked indifferent. Parker, the handsome elf. Ella, as ugly as Fitz, Tam, and Eddie. Nami, the one who brought me food. She's not bad. Mickey, I've never seen her before. She must be ugly too. Achi, the gentle sister. List, as handsome as Parker. List's face darkened. Shut up, Parker. Heh. Parker lazily sat down and continued to grin at Ella. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Ella's anger was hard to calm down. If List hadn't covered it with both hands, she would have definitely rushed up and fought with Parker. Whether she could beat him or not, her attitude must be clear. Parker, review the snake language I taught you today. List stretched out his hand and flicked Parker's forehead. His face was ugly. After this guy could speak, his mouth became more and more vicious. He obviously learned from the gentle Achi and his gentleman self, but he didn't learn any elegance. Parker sat on the table. I want to eat cornmeal. I'm going to check at night. If you don't learn the snake language well, you can't eat anything. Hee hee. With the angry Ella back to the castle, List appeased it for a long time before it calmed down. List was also very helpless about this. Ella's temper could not be underestimated. Parker, Fitz, Tam, and Eddie were not good-tempered elves. Only Nami and Mickey were worry-free. If it weren't for the suppression of the contract, if it weren't for the fact that the terrestrial elves and aquatic elves did not live together, they would have fought sooner or later. When he was annoyed, in Tulip Castle, the Count tasted the unpalatable bootmouth stork meat. He felt bitter in his heart. A high-level World of Warcraft was easily killed. List's strength is probably above all the Sky Knight. The most important thing is, why did he kill the bootmouth stork? He swallowed a piece of World of Warcraft meat with difficulty. My heart bled. Advanced World of Warcraft. Advanced World of Warcraft that could fly. Why didn't you call me along to capture it and tame it? This is a high-tier flight World of Warcraft mount. I've been chasing after it for half my life, and I haven't even seen an intermediate flight World of Warcraft. Now, a high-tier flight World of Warcraft has become food on my plate. Logic told him that List might not be able to capture the boot-billed stork. Capturing it alive and killing it were two different difficulties. Moreover, even if he managed to capture and tame it, it would be given to List as a mount first, and if he wanted it, he could only do it through trade. The father and son had already separated. The value of an advanced World of Warcraft was astronomical. Just the materials that could be obtained from killing a high-level World of Warcraft could be compared to a lesser elf. Many of these materials were priceless. Not only could it be tamed into a mount, but it could also be used in battle, making it even more valuable. After all, Advanced World of Warcraft was much stronger than the Sky Knight. Therefore, after feeling sad for a long time, he couldn't help but sigh. This kid's luck is still so unbelievable. If one day he told me he rode a dragon, I would probably be indifferent. I would be numb. At the dining table, his heir, Levis, chewed on the World of Warcraft meat while praising, high-tier World of Warcraft meat. Although the taste is average, it's very tasty. I didn't expect List to get his hands on a high-tier World of Warcraft. Father, is a high-tier World of Warcraft so easy to kill? There are strong and weak high-tier World of Warcraft. There aren't many who have seen a high-tier World of Warcraft, and even fewer who have fought it. But this boot-billed stork knows a lot of high-tier World of Warcraft, so it shouldn't be weak. It should have the strength of a perfect tier Sky Knight. The Earl agreed with List's estimation. In the letter, List estimated the boot-billed stork's strength to be a perfect tier Sky Knight. A perfect tier Sky Knight? Levis was surprised. Lytton was even more stunned. Father, Brother List is just an ordinary Sky Knight. How could he kill a perfect tier Sky Knight? Madame Penelope, who came to the dinner party, was also surprised. So, Lee William, you definitely couldn't kill a boot-billed stork. But List did. Doesn't that mean he's stronger than you? Madame Marie, Lavera, and Loria all stared at the Earl, waiting for an answer. The Count glanced at everyone. His hand holding the knife and fork slightly trembled, but he immediately regained his composure. He said indifferently, fighting demonic beasts isn't just about who is stronger than who. All sorts of factors can affect the outcome of the battle. Under normal circumstances, I probably can't kill a boot-billed stork. But with List's talent, it's only a matter of time before he surpasses me. He didn't have the nerve to say that he couldn't beat List for a long time. He only ambiguously mentioned List's talent. It was only a matter of time before he surpassed him. It sounded like he would surpass him later, but in fact, he meant he would surpass him sooner. As for whether the others could understand, that wasn't the point he was concerned about. But he still forcefully changed the topic. List's talent is amazing, but hard work is equally important. Levis, you're already at a crucial point in becoming a Sky Knight. I hope to hear good news from you as soon as possible. Levis nodded heavily. Father, I've always been working hard. Loria continued. Father, Levis has always been working hard, but his talent can't be compared to List's. He still needs the family's strong support. The sooner Levis becomes a Sky Knight, I believe it'll be of great help to the family's fight for the title of Marquis. Lee William glanced at Loria and nodded. The family will naturally give him our full support. Madame Marie smiled and said to the Count, as the heir of the Tulip family, Levis indeed needs the family's strong support. You're still in the prime of your life, but with an excellent heir like Levis and a genius like Liszt helping you, I believe that after a few development orders, no one will be able to stop the Tulip family's advancement. Lee William heard this. His previous gloominess had been swept away, replaced by excitement. That's right, Liszt and I will join hands, father and son, and together, I'll be able to claim all the achievements from the development orders. In a few years, I'll set foot on the soil of Ironhoof Island and rule over a third of the island. Liszt didn't know about the Count's lofty aspirations inspired by the boot-billed stork. He was still busy in the territory. Although he had delegated all the work to his subordinates, he still paid attention to the progress of every matter, no matter how big or small. Right now, his main concern was the planting of the flame mushrooms. Speculations on the relationship between weave nodes, sprites, and dragons was already being written. The planting restrictions of the flame mushrooms would be a very good starting point. Sir Viscount, the current batch of mature flame mushrooms harvested is indeed much worse than the previous batches. After refining the magic power elixir, Chrissy gave an affirmative answer. In that case, there is indeed a restriction on the discarded cordyceps. This is a bit awkward. I have just opened 2,000 mu of shiitake greenhouses in the mushroom town, while there are still more than 200 mu of shiitake greenhouses in the flower town. Although it is regrettable, but it is inevitable to reduce the number of flame mushroom greenhouses. After I have calculated the most suitable number of mu for the flame mushrooms to be planted, Sir Viscount, you can start dismantling them. However, you can replace the flame mushrooms with ordinary shiitake and wait until winter comes before planting the ice flame mushrooms. That is also a way. Liszt nodded. In another month, the greater aristocrats will send people to trade the discarded cordyceps. I hope that you can calculate the most suitable number of mu for the discarded cordyceps as soon as possible, so as to avoid falling into a passive position in the trade. Chrissy thought for a moment. I should be able to finish the calculation. The discarded cordyceps trade. Chapter 577. This chapter is a glorious battle song. Please update. The flame mushroom experiment was presided over by Chris Truth, so Liszt was more at ease. It was now early May. Although most of the crops had not yet matured, many crops could be harvested with the help of the cordyceps. Therefore, for the first time, corn cobs and corn rice appeared on Liszt's menu. Corn cobs tasted a bit sweet, which was somewhat different from the corn cobs on Earth. The cobs were larger, but the grains were sparse and not plump enough. They belonged to the category of inferior corn cobs. Corn rice was cooked from corn kernels after shelling. Compared with millet rice, it tasted more fragrant and had a smoother texture. In the absence of rice, corn rice could successfully replace rice. Eating pasta or millet rice every day did not suit Liszt's taste. From now on, my staple food will be corn rice. Every 1, 3, 5, and 7 days, I will eat corn rice at noon and pasta at night. Every 2, 4, and 6 days, I will eat corn rice at night and millet rice at noon. As for the morning, I will add 2 more corn cobs for each meal. Yes, master. Butler Carter noted down Liszt's instructions. Immediately after, he signaled the servants to bring 3 stir-fried dishes and said, Master, this is freshly squeezed corn oil from corn, stir-fried tomatoes and eggs, stir-fried shredded meat with onions, and stir-fried beans. Mrs. Abby hopes that you can taste them and then suggest whether or not to use corn oil for stir-frying. Liszt picked up his chopsticks and rinsed his mouth. He drank a mouthful of water and rinsed his mouth. Then, he picked up a piece of tomato scrambled eggs and put it in his mouth to chew for a moment. He couldn't help but nod his head. The taste is not bad. I don't feel the taste of corn. The taste of oil is also very faint. After rinsing his mouth, he switched to stir-fried shredded meat with onions and finally stir-fried beans. After tasting all 3, he had a general answer. Use corn oil for tomato scrambled eggs and stir-fried beans. Use soybean oil for stir-fried shredded meat with onions. As for the other stir-fried dishes, use oil. I will make a decision after tasting them one by one. Butler Carter replied, Yes, sir. The castle's kitchen used corn oil, peanut oil, soybean oil, grapeseed oil, and so on. Now, with the addition of corn oil, there were more choices to go with it. He believed that it would further enhance the taste of some dishes. In terms of eating, List was not a glutton to begin with, but there were not many entertainment options in this world. He would either watch stage plays, skits, read books, ride horses, hunt, or go fishing. After a long time, he would get bored. He didn't like playing mahjong or poker, so he started to study eating and drinking. He didn't mind making every dish the most exquisite delicacy. The team of chefs he kept in the castle alone was more than the number of chefs in many marquises' castles. Moreover, the types of research were all different. Some specialized in making noodles, some specialized in stir-frying, some specialized in making pastries, some specialized in making seafood, some specialized in making barbecue, and some specialized in making fruits and vegetables, and so on. After he had tasted the stir-fried corn oil, the valet came to report, "Master, the restaurant's chef, Barwell, is here to see you." Barwell? List raised his eyebrows. It had been a long time since he had heard from the chef that he had funded to research tofu. "Bring him to see me." After a while, Barwell came to the dining hall, knelt down and saluted. Without waiting for List to ask, he said excitedly, "Praise be to Sir, Knight's glory, Barwell has finally made tofu. The white and tender tofu is exactly the same as the tofu you, Sir Lord, have described." "Oh, the tofu has been made? Did you bring it?" "The tofu is very soft." So Barwell left it in the restaurant's kitchen. "Forget it, I will go take a look." List couldn't wait to get up and see the long-awaited tofu. The retainer immediately brought the blue-blooded horse and gave it to him to ride. Walking in the flower town, List no longer rode the chocobo Loki. He had previously given Paris the black dragon. Instead, he rode the blue-blooded horse gifted by the Grand Duke. He named the horse Gem, as the mount of an honorary member of the blue-blooded orders of chivalry. It could not be given to others and could only be ridden by himself. Moreover, Gem's quality was indeed outstanding. It was an excellent warhorse that could follow him to the battlefield in the future. A knight could have many mounts and could switch them at any time. After arriving at the restaurant, the merchants eating on the second floor were immediately asked to leave by List's retainer knight. No one dared to make trouble or complain. This was the authority and status of an aristocrat. The valet wiped the tables and chairs, and List sat down. Barwell had already served the tofu in a whole basin. It was snow-white, but its surface was very rough. It was somewhat different from the tofu in List's memory. Fortunately, the difference was not great. He scooped a bit with a wooden spoon. It was not very soft, but it was not too hard either. It barely passed. "Have you tried it?" "Sir Lord, I had already made the tofu half a month ago, but at that time, I did not dare to guarantee that it was tofu. I also did not know if it was poisonous or if it was edible. During this half a month, I tested its toxicity while sorting out the technique of making tofu. I only dared to report to Sir Lord when I felt that it was up to standard." "You made it half a month ago? Tell me about the production process." "I first repeatedly squeezed the soybeans, then started to boil the soy milk. After that, I braised it according to the method taught by Sir. I tried many things and finally succeeded in braising it with seawater, which condensed into tofu blossoms. I scooped up the blossoms and pressed out the water with a wooden plank to make the tofu cubes. Seawater can also be braised. At first, I found that seawater could condense the soy milk into tofu blossoms, but the tofu made was very unpalatable, bitter, and astringent. Later, I slowly explored and found a suitable method to braise it with seawater. Finally, I was able to make the tofu that Sir Lord requested." "I see." This was the first time List heard that seawater could actually be braised. In any case, the tofu was already placed in front of him. He immediately began to taste it. After entering his mouth, the familiar taste of tofu suddenly filled his mouth. He could not help but exclaim in admiration, "Good! This is the tofu I am familiar with, Bauer. Although you took a long time to develop the tofu and also cost me a lot of gold coins, you still deserve a reward for being able to develop the tofu." On the spot, List rewarded Bauer with a gold coin. Bauer took the gold coin and replied with great joy, "Thank you, Sir Lord. Although you have made the tofu, it is still very rough. I will continue to fund you to research better production techniques. In the future, you will be responsible for the supply of tofu in the castle. Also, the flower restaurant will be handed over to someone else. I will build a tofu workshop for you to manage. Bauer had the status of a serf. Naturally, he had to do whatever Liszt told him to do. Moreover, being a workshop steward was a lot better than being a chef in a restaurant, so there was no reason for him to be unwilling. The elated Bauer quickly stir-fried a plate of braised tofu in accordance with the requirements of the Sir Lord. Eating the familiar taste, Liszt was particularly satisfied. In the future, the tofu workshop will be a key protected area of the territory, and the tofu recipe will be kept strictly confidential. Tofu will be another important specialty of the territory. Tofu had a short shelf life and was not suitable for distant sales, nor did he intend to export it. Chapter 578. This chapter is Xiao Ruizi's Kitchen. The development of tofu had been completed. After enjoying the tofu banquet, he was ready to devote his free time to another important research work. White paper. He had enough of thick bast paper, which was expensive, of poor quality, smelly, and too thick to write many words. A thick book might only have tens of thousands of words, and even a large book could not write more than 100 or 200,000 words. So, the bookshelves in his study seemed to be full of books, but in fact, there was not much content. Although the territory already has a thick bast paper workshop, white paper is the most suitable paper for writing. Liszt went to Port Town to inspect the thick bast paper workshop. There were 3 papersmiths in the thick bast paper workshop. The first one was Ravanya, a craftsman from the main city of Iron Hoof Island. After that, the 2 paper craftsmen searched for them from the Eagle Kingdom. In the workshop, Ravanya kept introducing the production of thick bast paper to Liszt. From its name, one could tell that thick bast paper was made from animal hides. After the animal skin was crushed, it was specially stirred, and an additive called gray dolphin gum was added to condense it into paper. Gray dolphin gum was the subcutaneous fat of a gray dolphin beast. There were many gray dolphin beasts on the continent, but in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, it was only found on Blue Dragon Island and Iron Hoof Island. This small beast liked open plains and could not be raised. Therefore, gray dolphin gum was very valuable. As a result, thick bast paper was also very expensive. Only nobles could afford it. I already know how to make thick bast paper. Today, I am going to teach you a new paper-making technique. Liszt dismissed the irrelevant people, leaving only the 3 papersmiths. This paper is called white paper. It is completely different from thick bast paper. The raw materials used are all plants, including hemp, bark, straw, and the like. The 3 papersmiths all showed surprised expressions. Sir Lord, plants can also be made into paper? I am not sure, but it is worth a try. Liszt did not give a complete answer. I do not remember the specific manufacturing process. You will need to explore. The general process is like this. Choose the materials first. I suggest using flax as the raw material. He had an impression of Paper Blanche's native craftsmanship. First, he prepared the materials such as hemp, tree bark, straw, and bamboo, and soaked them for 10 days to half a month. After soaking it until it was soft, it was then pounded and pounded into a paste. Water was added to stir it, and the coarse material was removed to become pulp. It would be best to add a little thickener to make the pulp easier to shape. After that, he used the bamboo curtain to scoop up the paper. He placed the bamboo curtain into the paper pulp and evenly distributed a layer of paper pulp on it. He scooped it up to control the water and then inverted it to take out the wet paper. The wet sheets were stacked together, and the water was pressed down with a heavy object. Finally, the sheets were spread out one by one to dry in the sun. There doesn't seem to be bamboo in this world. Liszt suddenly thought of this when he was imparting the technique. Therefore, he could only roughly describe the bamboo curtain used to fish out the paper, and let the paper craftsmen find suitable tools to fish out the paper themselves. All in all, this is the specific process, but the paper produced in this way should be rather rough. What I need is a smooth white paper. You need to keep experimenting and strive to improve on the foundation of this craft to produce real white paper. The paper craftsmen listened. They couldn't guarantee that they could produce white paper, so they could only try their best. However, the 3 paper craftsmen were all very excited to be taught their skills by the Lord. Not to mention the importance of craft inheritance for craftsmen. The honor of being the Lord's personal disciple was worth showing off for a lifetime. Of course, the white paper craft must be kept secret, which is far more important than making tofu. If he hadn't become a dragon knight, List wouldn't even have been willing to take it out now, for fear that he wouldn't be able to keep it a secret. So he immediately arranged for Gort to arrange the white paper workshop far from the town, and told Paris to guard and patrol the white paper workshop. If the white paper was successfully produced and the process was mature, it would definitely be a profitable business. And this was an exclusive technology that could be passed down from generation to generation. In the next period of time, List's life began to become regular again. He went to the Dodo Island once every 5 days to practice with the little fire dragon, Leo, and improve their relationship. For the remaining 4 days, he accompanied Achi to study the Sun language, taught Parker to speak, trained the Blizzard Beast, inspected the territory, and inspected the progress. He also wrote speculations on the correlation between magic network nodes, elves, and dragons. He had written about 20,000 words in this book, mostly divergent conjectures. Based on the relevant inspiration of the internet, he guessed the magic network in his imagination. As time passed, the flame mushrooms matured in batches, and the quality plummeted. With the harvest in batches, when there were only 1,000 acres left, the quality finally felt a significant improvement. According to the calculation of the correlation data, List and Chris jointly determined that the suitable planting area for the flame mushrooms was 1,000 acres at the current planting density. Now I just have to wait for June 10th, when the other nobles come to trade for the abandoned worm grass. List waited silently. However, the abandoned worm grass from the previous quest had not yet arrived. Good news came from the Sun language quest. In the seaside villa, Achi excitedly told List, "Brother, Achi has deciphered this book, Druid Compulsory, Magic Bean Planting, and learned a new magic from it." "What?" "Big brother, these Sun scrolls are basically magic books, but they are magic used by a type of mage called the Druid." Brother's previous understanding of the title is correct. This book is called Druid Transformation into Bear Guide. It records how druids turn into bears. She handed over the Sun book that List had translated Druid Transformation into XX Bear XX. But Achi doesn't have the energy to decipher it for now. "So, you've already deciphered another book, Druid Compulsory, Magic Bean Planting, ? I haven't completely deciphered yet. I've only just deciphered one of the magic spells, which belongs to Magic Bean Planting, Bathing in the Sun," Achi said seriously. "Bathing in the sun?" List was a little confused. What bathing in the sun was also a type of magic. And magic bean planting was a very large type of magic? Yes, this is a very strange magic system. It is very different from the human magic that Achi learned. Human magic is divided according to the different nature of magic. Achi can only be compatible with water magic, but the magic of druids is not divided according to nature, but is chaos magic. After Achi's detailed introduction, List finally understood. The Sun's child race, among which the spellcasters were called druids, they mastered the magic created by chaos magic. Magic was mainly divided into 2 types. One was the transformation magic of the animal series, which could imitate all kinds of animals. Druid Transformation into Bear Guide was to transform into a bear to fight. The other was the planting magic of the plant series, which could affect the growth of plants like elves, and even the plants they developed needed to cooperate with this type of magic to grow well. Druid Compulsory Magic Bean Planting was the planting magic of the plant series. Each plant had a special set of planting magic beans corresponded to magic bean planting magic, and bathing in the sun was one of them. Chapter 579. Mission completed. Reward. Druid spell, Magic Bean Planting. Achi deciphered the spell, Bathing in the Sunlight from Druid must learn, Magic Bean Planting. Naturally, the mission was completed, and the reward was this spell. For List, this was tantamount to opening the door to a new world. It turned out that the seeds kept by the skyship were not simply potion seeds, but special plants developed by the druids, which needed druid magic to grow. No wonder these seedlings germinated slowly, grew slowly, and there was not even a single seedling with signs of magic. Immediately, Achi demonstrated the magic bean planting spell, bathing in the sunlight. She waved her slender fingers gently, and suddenly a chaotic color of magic was sprinkled on the magic beans in the pot. The leaves seemed to come to life in an instant, flashing like crystal jade in a regular pattern. The sunlight sprinkled on it, reflecting a faint 7-colored light. After 3 minutes, everything returned to its original state. List found that the magic beans actually grew a lot in a short time. Amazing! He had never seen magic that could promote the growth of plants other than elves. Achi shook her head. Brother, Achi can only be compatible with water magic, and it took a long time to use water magic to drive chaos magic to cast the spell. If it was an ordinary mage, it should be much easier to cast the spell than Achi. List was surprised. You can actually use water magic to drive chaos magic? Achi smiled sweetly. Hehe. Achi is very hardworking. Then have you ever thought about using water magic to drive other magic? In this way, wouldn't you be able to cast other magic? Actually, Achi has thought about it, but it is very difficult to do, and Achi doesn't have time to try for now. There are still many books of the sun waiting for Achi to decipher. Compared to driving other magic, Achi prefers to study druid magic. They are really amazing. That's right, druid magic is more important. List immediately decided. Achi, you record all the deciphered spells. I will go back to the Magic Academy and try to train a group of human druids to help me grow these magic bean plants. The Magic Academy was not a place to nurture mages. In his mind, it was a place to nurture pharmacists and magical equipment forgers. Now, with the addition of druid magic, it was also a place to cultivate magic farmers. Plants that could be eaten and used to make potions were undoubtedly very valuable. There was no fixed name for this kind of plant in Helios. After discussion with Achi, List decided to name them magic plants, or magic plants for short, to distinguish them from magic potions. In order to hide the secret of the Child of the Sun, List asked Achi to hide the druid profession when recording druid magic. Replacing them were magical plant masters and nature magic. Actually, wood magic was more suitable, but the humans of this world had already called the magic represented by the elves as wood magic. In order to differentiate, List changed the druid's plant magic to nature magic. He urged Achi to continue developing nature magic. List left the seaside castle and rode the rainbow whale, Lolth, straight toward Port Town. After arriving at Port Town, he changed his clothes and hurried to the Night Academy. The Night Academy was located in the Night Square near Port Town. Just like the Magic Academy was stationed in the Mage Tower, the Night Academy was stationed in the Night Square. The Night Square was some distance from the town. It was a row of 3-story stone buildings that surrounded a huge square, which had just been built. The architectural style was similar to the Mage Tower, both in a neoclassical style. In fact, after the style of Thorn Castle was determined before construction started, List requested that the architectural style of the future Algae City must be the same as that of Thorn Castle. The Mage Tower and the Night Square were no exception. In addition, the Algae City Administration Office, City Hall, and other buildings which were under construction were all in the neoclassical style. The Algae City was still a port town. In fact, it was already planned according to the city's measurements, including streets, sewers, and building layouts, which were designed according to a medium-sized city with a population of 10 or 20,000. Now, just waiting for the final version of Thorn Castle's blueprint to come out, List's new home would finally be located on Black Horse Island, complementing the Algae City and complementing each other. Sir, Marcus, who was in charge of the daily affairs of the Night Academy, quickly came to greet him. List simply said, I am going to inspect the orphanage, select some suitable seedlings, and send them to the Magic Academy to study magic. Marcus was a little puzzled. Hasn't Madame Chris already come here with 3 mages to pick out the candidates? She has selected too few seedlings. I will give her another batch. It is very difficult to train a wizard. The more seedlings, the higher the chance of success. List lied through his teeth. In fact, he came to the orphanage because of the latest smoke mission. Mission: bathe in the light of dawn in the Mage Tower. For ordinary people, this is a magical realm, where mysterious and dangerous magicians live. But for the twins, Lucy and Lucy of the orphanage, it is a place they yearn for. Why not arrange for them to learn magic? Reward: a sprite worm. Arranging for the twin orphans Lucy and Ruth to enter the Magic Academy to study magic. This almost told List that the two had unique magic talents. The reason why he was so sure was that there was a smoke mission to arrange for the girl Emily to undergo suitable knight training. As a result, Emily became an Earth Knight in just 1 year. Her talent was so high that it made people jealous. Moreover, with List's large amount of nutrition, Emily, who trained hard, has recently been vaguely touching the bottleneck of the elite Earth Knight. Now that the smoke mission had prompted Lucy and Ruth to study magic, how could List not be looking forward to it? The twins had terrifying magic talents. Anyway, for the sprite worm, the mission had to be done. It was a happy thing that they could become genius wizards. But if they could not become genius wizards, it would not cause any loss, so why not? Marcus did not say anything more and immediately led List to the orphanage. The orphanage had a separate large courtyard in the Night Square, where hundreds of orphans of different sizes lived. It was managed militarily. There was no such thing as a happy childhood. The only chance for these orphans to change their fate was to show their potential in their daily studies. Selecting seedlings was just an excuse. As for how to distinguish who had magic talent, he simply did not know. Therefore, his choice was to look at the orphanage's list and ask the person in charge of the orphanage how many twins there were. After asking, there were no less than 5 pairs of twins, among which the names of Lucy and Ruth were impressively included. Lucy and Ruth were selected. He then simply selected 18 pleasing Lolis and Shota, making up a total of 20 people, and sent them to the Magic Academy. At this time, there were already 40 apprentice wizards studying in the Magic Academy. The 4 wizards, including Chris, were each responsible for a part of the teaching. Seeing that the Sir Lord had brought 20 more apprentice wizards, Chris looked at the children and her scalp began to turn numb. Sir Viscount, 40 apprentice wizards are already too many, yet you sent another 20. The Magic Academy is simply going to explode. Chapter 580. Nature Magic? Unsurprisingly, Chris was attracted by nature magic. Sir Viscount, what is nature magic and what is a magic plant master? After telling Chris the set of words that had been formulated before, List added, as for nature magic, I am in the process of sorting it out and it is not convenient to disclose it for the time being. However, the information will be sent to you soon. When you study nature magic, pay more attention to cultivating magic plant masters. Well, I can't wait to see nature magic. List pointed to the 20 new magic apprentices who were lining up downstairs to register and said to Chris, do you see the 2 twin girls? The elder sister is Lucy and the younger sister is Ruth. They are very talented in learning in the orphanage and are very proficient in reading, writing, and speaking Serpentine. What's wrong? I appreciate the desire of these 2 girls for magic. Pay more attention to them. If they have good magic talent, then please focus on cultivating them. If not, then forget it. List was not sure whether Lucy and Ruth were genius wizards or not. Chris took a deep look at Lucy and Ruth and nodded. I understand, Sir Viscount. After doing this, List also left the wizard tower. He summoned the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward: an alfalfa sprite worm. Oh, an alfalfa sprite worm. Not bad. There is only 1 alfalfa sprite worm in the Black Horse pasture. Obviously, its range of influence is too small. 1 more alfalfa sprite worm can cultivate a large number of high-quality pasture and strengthen the Black Blood Horse herd. List expressed his satisfaction with the alfalfa sprite worm. It was already late today. He was going to go to the Black Horse pasture tomorrow to find the sprite worm and prevent it from being eaten by horses. List then looked at the new mission. Mission: excessive attention to the giant kelp sprite has aroused the jealousy of the thorn sprite in the castle. It is burning with anger and can no longer vent its anger by sowing thorns in the fields. It may need more care from you. Reward: a variant type of thorns. Ha! List suddenly had an indescribable feeling. Did I pay too much attention to Parker? Has Ella's jealousy reached an uncontrollable level? It seems that I really like the new and hate the old. I really have to take good care of it. Ella is really my lucky star to get a new variant of thorns. The thorn sprite had a bad temper, but it was his first sprite after all, so it was of great significance. Therefore, what he had to do was to return to Flower Town overnight, bring Ella with him, and then continue back to Black Horse Island. Early the next morning, Nyeyen headed to Herding Horse Village. He rode on Lightning and galloped around the Black Horse pasture. After searching for a while, he successfully found the alfalfa sprite. Its worm stalk wasn't obvious, so it should have just been born. Charles, have the Worm Protection Squad immediately send out members to protect this alfalfa worm stalk. The head of the security group, Charles Trapp, bowed and replied, "Yes, my lord." Immediately after, List went straight to Thorntown opposite the Black Horse pasture. Thorntown had only built a few rows of houses for the serfs to live in. Currently, there were only two types of industries in the town: the thorn plantation, which was over 1,000 acres, and the blackberry plantation, which was only slightly more than 100 acres. The blackberry garden had blackberry cordyceps, and the thorn garden had 3 thorn cordyceps, one of which belonged to Ella. He came to the thorn garden. Ella was very excited and kept crying. Whether it was getting close to the thorns or playing with List, it made her very happy. He didn't know what level of care was needed to complete the task. List planned to play with Ella during this period of time, which was considered as compensation for his neglect of it for a while. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, he went to the fairy island 3 times to practice with the little fire dragon Leo. The smoke task had not been completed, but Ella had been playing crazily during this time. Following List, the whole Black Horse Island was full of Ella's figure. On the other side, after constant efforts, Achi deciphered more and more sun characters, and the progress of her research on natural magic had also advanced by leaps and bounds. She deciphered 60% of the content of Druid Compulsory Magic Bean Planting, and learned 6 Magic Bean Planting Magic. Magic Bean Germination, Bathing in the Sun, Rapid Sprouting, Lush Branches and Leaves, Flower Bud Protection, and Magic Condensation. In addition to relaxing her mind, she also deciphered the magic of Strong Straw and Developed Root from Druid Advanced Magic Wheat Planting, Vine Parallel from Druid Elective Magic Melon Planting, and Lotus Seed Sprouting from Water Specialization Magic Lotus Planting. In addition, for several other magic plants, she also deciphered the names of the relevant books. They were Vegetable Specialization Magic Cigar Planting, Seasoning Specialization Magic Pepper Planting, Healing Specialization Magic Ginseng Planting, Fruit Specialization Magic Pear Planting, Dried Fruit Specialization Magic Sunflower Planting, High-Grade Druid Compulsory Transfiguration Tree Planting, High-Grade Druid Elective Magic Orange Planting. So the real name of the ship what I got before that can grow the ship in the sky is Transfiguration Tree, a natural magic that high-grade druid must learn. List suddenly understood. He had great expectations for the Transfiguration Tree. According to the simple content that Achi deciphered, with the help of Transfiguration Tree planting magic, she could control the Transfiguration Tree to grow in the way she wanted. This kind of wood could reach the quality of iron wood. Soaked in water for hundreds or even thousands of years, it would not rot, and it would still be as hard as before. One could imagine how hard the carriages and ships that were planted with magic would be. He couldn't help but exclaim, "The children of the sun are really a magical race. Natural magic is infinitely magical." Achi nodded in agreement. Magic beans and magic wheat are the main food. Magic melon is the fruit. Magic lotus is the vegetable in the water. Magic eggplant is the vegetable. Magic pepper is the seasoning. Magic ginseng can cure diseases. Magic pear is the fruit. Magic sunflower is the dried fruit. Transfiguration tree is the building material, and magic orange is probably also a fruit. There are many varieties. Indeed, this is a valuable inheritance. Achi, your work is very important. Yes. A chi will definitely decipher all of them, without a doubt. These magic plants and natural magic sent by the skyship had unlimited potential. Once developed, the help that could be provided was immeasurable. But why did a skyship, pulling almost all the resources that the children of the sun relied on to survive, sink here on Black Horse Island? He felt that it seemed to have something to do with the note in the floating bottle. The tower collapsed. The tree city burned. XX has perished. The children of the sun will rise with the flame. The children of the outside world, you are free. Perhaps the home of the children of the sun was destroyed, and the skyship was the ark they used to escape? Liszt shook his head and did not delve into it. There was no way to delve into it. Those sun books were all about natural magic and some architectural drawings, and there was no historical record of the children of the sun. Not even a word. Even a chi turned over all the sun books and did not find out what XX, replaced by XX has perished. It was like a place name, but it was not even clear which continent the children of the sun lived on, let alone a place name that might be a proper noun. When I become a dragon knight, I will organize a sailing fleet and cross the Devil's Sea. Chapter 581. This chapter is titled, Forget About Giving a Name. Thank you very much. Time flew, and it was already early June. The abandoned worm-grass trading team, which had made an appointment with Count Jonas Moongrass, finally arrived at Black Horse Island. The team was led by Jonas' son, Jobs Moongrass, an official member of the Blue Blood Orders of Chivalry. Sir Viscount, let me introduce you to the leaders of the team. This is Lasvia White Glutinous Rice, the second son of the Marquis of Leather Island. Jobs introduced a total of 4 sons of great aristocrats, 2 sons of marquises, 2 sons of earls, and 5 families including Jobs himself. Liszt warmly received the sons of these great aristocrats and played for half a day on Black Horse Island before starting negotiations. The Jobs family's cordyceps were Blue Matsutake, which was a water attribute cordyceps. The Lasvia family's cordyceps were Golden Threaded, which was an earth attribute cordyceps. The other 3 types were the dark attribute cordyceps Black Truffle, the ice attribute cordyceps Hericium, and the thunder attribute cordyceps Horseshoe Bubble. Each family brought not only the fungus and ingredient recipes, but also 10 serfs who could grow abandoned wormgrass. Liszt could exchange technology alone, but if he wanted these serfs, he must exchange them with serfs who could grow flame mushrooms. He had naturally selected the 50 serfs long ago. They were all serfs without families. Each family exchanged individually and signed a treaty prohibiting the random spread of these abandoned wormgrass. These abandoned wormgrass had their own distribution range, and the random spread was bound to cause great harm to the holder. Depending on the quality, yield, and use of each abandoned wormgrass, it involved more or less compensation of gold coins. But overall, Liszt's flame mushroom not only did not lose money, but he also earned a slight profit of 800 gold coins. Flame mushroom was a fire attribute abandoned wormgrass and had a wide range of uses. After all, there were many knight with fire attribute chi, and the quality of the flame potion extracted from the flame mushroom was not low, so it was naturally more expensive. So, the abandoned wormgrass trade ended, and the Black Horse Island territory suddenly had 5 new potion specialties. However, Liszt, who had extra thoughts in his mind, found out more about the noble lords who had abandoned wormgrass from the mouths of the 5 aristocratic sons. He learned that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire had 8 kinds of abandoned wormgrass in addition to the flame mushroom. Because of its low production and low quantity, most people didn't know what abandoned wormgrass was. 5 of them had been traded to Liszt, and the remaining 3 had not been considered by Count Jonas because their territories overlapped. These 3 kinds of abandoned cordyceps were Thunder City Count Sarier Jacaranda Territories Water Attribute Abandoned Cordyceps White Ghost Brush, Red Sand Island Count Bras Butterfly Orchid Territories Earth Attribute Abandoned Cordyceps Big Fur, and Loya City Viscount Tevis Poplar Territories Wind Attribute Abandoned Cordyceps Greenwood Ear. The 5 noble heirs left Black Horse Island with the flame mushroom fungus, formula, information, and serfs. Liszt secretly planned Blue Matsutake, Black Truffle, Golden Thread Fungus, Monkey Head Mushroom, and Flattery Bubble. I've already traded away my flame mushroom. However, not only do I have the flame mushrooms, I also have the ice snow flame mushrooms that I grow in winter. I wonder if the flame mushrooms and the ice snow flame mushrooms will restrict each other. The snow flame mushroom was a variant of the flame mushroom. I'll try to grow it this winter. If there are no restrictions, I can use the snow flame mushroom to trade again. I'll trade for the big fir, green wood ear, and white ghost brush. That way, I have 10 kinds of abandoned cordyceps, and it won't be a problem to grow 10,000 acres. The amount of potions produced by 10,000 mu of worm abandonment grass was much higher than what the giant kelp sprite Parker could produce. In other words, there was another great sprite in the territory. Wonderful. The joy of abandoning the cordyceps had just passed, and the smoke mission had another breakthrough. After continuing to care for the thorn sprite, Ella, the mission was finally completed. Mission completed. Reward: Fire Attribute Variant Thorns. List couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Fire Attribute Fast-Growing Demon Thorns? The original mission introduction of the fast-growing demon thorns was a potion-type variant of thorns, which belonged to the Chaos Attribute. Now that there was a Fire Attribute in front of it, there was no doubt that its Chaos Attribute had mutated into the Fire Attribute. The value of the Chaos Attribute and the specific attribute of the potion could not be said to be higher or lower. But for List, of course, the Fire Attribute of the fast-growing demon thorns was more valuable because he and the little fire dragon were both of the Fire Attribute. The Fire Attribute potion had the greatest effect on them. More than 800 acres of Thorn's magic herb field. List carefully searched and finally found a mutated thorn glowing with red magic in a corner. It named this thorn as the fast-growing fire thorn. He was going to plant fast-growing fire thorns around Ella's cordyceps, and continue to plant fast-growing demon thorns for the other 2 thorns worms' cordyceps. Maybe the fast-growing demon thorns would continue to mutate in the future. Ella, well done. List turned his head and gave Ella, who was squatting on his shoulder, a kiss. Ella suddenly laughed, mixed with a wow sound. The more List looked at it, the more he liked it. Not only did he have feelings for Ella, but more importantly, Ella's mutated thorns had a fast-growing attribute, and their growth rate was far faster than other plants. Like the fast-growing demon thorns, with the blessing of the cordyceps, could be harvested 4 times a year, which was faster than planting wheat. As for now, List found that the thorns under the influence of Ella had a strong mutated attribute: fast-growing thorns, fast-growing poisonous thorns, fast-growing demon thorns, fast-growing iron thorns, and the latest fast-growing fire thorns, a total of 6 new varieties of thorns. But speaking of which, when Ella's cordyceps affects the mutation of the thorns, it always seems to have a strong emotional color. At the beginning, the thorns worm was unwilling to end its life, so it broke out and mutated 5 kinds of thorns. It finally broke the shackles of fate and evolved into a thorn elf. Now Ella was wronged and had nowhere to vent its anger. Then it mutated into fast-growing fire thorns. He looked at Ella, who was tired of playing and began to doze off, and narrowed his eyes. Maybe I have to stimulate Ella often in the future? Maybe one day it will be stimulated to evolve into a big elf? Among all the elves, he loved Ella the most and hoped that Ella could continue to evolve. It would become a big elf with a lifespan of 200 years, or even a dragon elf with a lifespan of 500 years. It would accompany him. It happened that he planned to become a dragon lord one day, and he could probably live for 400 or 500 years. So it must be stimulated. As for how to stimulate it, that was another matter. Ella, who wanted to sleep in a daze, did not know what his master was thinking, and what kind of waves would be set off in his future life. At this time, List has shifted his attention and looked at the latest task. Task: all abandoned cordyceps have been traded. Blue matsutake, black truffle, golden filament, Hericium arenaceus, and flattery are all important potion crops that can provide a steady stream of potions. Please place these abandoned cordyceps properly. Reward: a sprite worm. Chapter 582. This chapter is Little Ruizi's Kitchen. List intends to place the worm grass in Shiitake Town. Originally, it was planned to build more than 10,000 acres of shiitake greenhouses. Now it is just the right place to plant new wormgrass. Unfortunately, there are only 10 serfs for each kind of wormgrass. It is not easy to teach other serfs to grow in a short period of time. After all, the hydrology and climate of each island are different, and planting techniques need to be fine-tuned accordingly. Within about a year, these 5 kinds of wormgrass will not play a big role. However, List can afford to wait. He is still young, only 18 years old. Over the next period of time, he supervised the 50 new serfs to build greenhouses for discarding cordyceps. However, after these serfs inspected the environment of Shiitake Town, 20 serfs shook their heads. Only serfs who could grow golden thread, monkey head mushrooms, and flattery felt that the environment of Shiitake Town was suitable. The serf who planted the blue matsutake said, "My lord, blue matsutake needs dark, decaying woodland to grow. Shiitake Town lacks trees, and it is difficult to grow blue matsutake." The serf who planted the black truffles also said, "My lord, black truffles need a lot of dead trees, preferably dead pine trees, and should not be too close to the sea, otherwise the quality will be very poor. Then you will inspect Black Horse Island, choose the right place for planting, and ask Consultant Gort for what you lack." List has always been strategically located, providing a direction, and leaving the rest to his subordinates to execute. He deals with territorial affairs, nothing more than holding a meeting and arranging some old-fashioned decisions. You have to pay great attention. Gort, I leave it to you. Execute as soon as possible. This is a key industry of the territory. It cannot be ignored. I will reward you if you do well. To sum it up, it is just empty words. Fortunately, although he likes to use empty words instead of decision-making, he never interferes with specific work. For example, if the planting of the wormgrass is handed over to Gort, he will only ask about the progress and will not forcibly interfere with how to plant it. But in recent times, there are still many problems in the territory, and they are gradually haunting him. Flower Town Administrative Officer Isaiah kept complaining, "My lord, there is a serious shortage of serfs in Flower Town, and we can no longer transfer them to Black Horse Island. Have a cup of tea to calm down." List motioned to the servant to brew him a cup of green tea. "There will be serfs. I have already asked Levis to help me look for a new batch of 3,000 serfs. In addition, when the development order is issued again this year, I will continue to collect 20,000 serfs and transport them back." Isaiah bargained. "In that case, sir, you must distribute the 3,000 serfs to the Flower Town. The Flower Town can get a smaller share of the serfs at the end of the year. Rest assured, the serfs will not lack you. What you need to do now is to appease the people of the territory, make the serfs loyal to the territory, and prevent riots after the arrival of new serfs." "Yes, Your Excellency." Isaiah will strictly control public opinion and public sentiment in the territory, increase publicity efforts, and make the serfs submit as soon as possible. It will never affect the integration of the new serfs. He had just appeased Isaiah. Port Town's administrative officer, Blair, came to beg again. "We're short of manpower, my lord. The construction of the city hall has been halted for a week. There are no workers. Advisor Gort has transferred a group of serfs to plant abandoned wormgrass. If this goes on, there will be no one to maintain the town's operation. Don't be impatient, Blair. Come, have a cup of tea to calm down." List asked the servant to brew a cup of green tea for Blair. Serving guests with green tea has become his specialty, guiding the fashion of drinking green tea little by little. After a while, Blair was also sent away with the same words as before. List finally had a moment of peace. "I didn't expect that nearly 20,000 serfs would be transported back last year, and a small number of 5,000 serfs would be purchased in the middle, but it still can't keep up with the development needs of the territory." He himself was about to get angry. The serf trade with Levis had not stopped, and there was still a shortage of people. During the development order, serfs were cheap and good, and he bought them in large quantities. In peacetime, serfs were not only expensive but also mostly old, weak, sick, and disabled, and he still bought them in small quantities. Other people's territories did not have so many industries, and naturally did not need so many serfs, and they could develop step by step. In List's territory, industries emerged almost one after another, and each industry required a large number of serfs to operate. Therefore, serfs were always in short supply, and there had never been an abundance. I hope to develop magic plants as soon as possible and reduce the dependence on serfs. The guilt of engaging in the serf trade for a long time is too great. He secretly sighed faintly. Behind every ship of serfs was a wrong soul. Self-comforting excuses such as, "If I don't buy them, others will buy them. It's better to live in my territory," and so on, were becoming increasingly unable to calm the uneasiness of his conscience. He could quickly integrate into the aristocratic system and be corrupted by the luxurious aristocratic life, but the goodness in his heart was still faintly present. He wanted to convince himself that he was a transmigrator, and that the humans here were not compatriots at all, but just foreigners from a different world. But how could he be indifferent in the face of every living person? He drank the green tea in the cup in one gulp. He suddenly made a decision. I can't stop developing the territory. The only thing I can do is probably to ensure the safety of the serf trade and the happiness of the serfs in the territory. Starting tomorrow, taxes will be reduced, and the basic wage of the territory will be raised from 2 copper coins a day to 3 copper coins a day. This was the second time he had raised the wage standard. At the end of the year, he raised the wage standard from 1 copper coin to 2 copper coins. I have so many industries, and business can support the territory. There is no need to exploit the people. The dilemma of the shortage of people was difficult to solve, and bad news came one after another. This time, the bad news was that Achi was studying nature magic. After Achi's systematic research in the Sun language, she could already read a lot of the Sun language. In the book Druids Must Learn Magic Bean Planting, there was a detailed introduction to magic beans, which she translated. The general meaning was that it took 10 years for a magic bean to grow into a tree. The output in the first 10 years was very low, and it gradually increased in the last 10 years. At its peak, about 40 years later, each tree could produce 50,000 caddies of magic beans annually. A tree can produce 50,000 caddies annually. It's really amazing. List was speechless. But why does it take 10 years to bear fruit, and 20 years for the output to increase? Only after 40 years can it reach 50,000 caddies annually? 40 years later, List would be 58 years old, and according to his own estimation, he would probably have unified the continent. At that time, there would be no need for magic beans. Later, Achi deciphered Druids Must Learn Transfiguration Tree Planting, which also recorded the growth cycle of transfiguration trees. It took 100 years for a tree to grow to the point where it could be used to build the keel of a skyship. Even a transfiguration tree with the thickness of a wrist would take 20 years to grow. 20 years, the thickness of a wrist, barely enough to build a carriage. Do I need such a transfiguration tree? List was completely defeated by this news. In an instant, he lost interest in all the magic plants. However, he still spent 10 minutes to recover his state of mind, and then left the matter of nature magic and magic plants to Achi. After Achi's research results, he would give it to Chris to implement. 10 years to mature, 100 years to become useful. Such a good thing should be left for future generations. The disheartened List received good news a few days later. Chris and Glanny, the 2 mages, worked together and finally thoroughly studied the golden pearls produced by the golden lip clam. And using the golden pearls, they created a magic equipment that could cool down. The golden lip clam was a water element sea monster, and its pearls were also water element, but they could produce ice element effects. Chapter 583. As soon as he entered the 4th floor of the Mage Tower, he felt a cool breeze. It was now mid-June, officially entering the hot and unbearable summer. Although Black Horse Island had a high latitude, a lot of rainfall, and was above the sea, it was still frighteningly hot on a sunny day. It was about 27 or 28 degrees outside, but after entering the room, it only felt like a dozen degrees. The change in temperature was so great that it made one speechless. Viscount, this is the magic equipment we made with the golden pearl. The outer disk is a control magic array that can be operated and the temperature can be adjusted from high to low. Glanny, as the guide, introduced the attributes of the equipment to List in detail. It was basically a disc-shaped equipment with a golden pearl inlaid in the middle. List touched the disc and found that the temperature of the disc was similar to the indoor temperature, not colder. Is the temperature high or low now? It's basically a low-energy, high temperature. Adjust it to the lowest temperature and see how much you can lower it. Glanny now lived in the Mage Tower, had food and drink delivered, and occasionally went to the port town to watch stage plays and burlesque. He could often ask the great magician Chris for advice, and his life was happy, so his temper had improved a lot. He worked very hard and his tone was much gentler. Yes, Viscount. He quickly activated the magic runes on the disc and adjusted it. After a while, the temperature in the room plummeted and became colder and colder. When the temperature was lowered to about 4 or 5 degrees, it could not continue to cool down. List felt the goosebumps on his skin and frowned. This is its lowest temperature? Can't it be lowered to the point where it can freeze? I'm sorry, Viscount. The great magician and I have tried many times, but we still can't make the golden pearl condense into ice. This is the upper limit of its magic power. Glanny said regretfully, if ice could be made, the value of the golden pearl would definitely double. Chris also shook her head. Unfortunately, the golden clam is a water monster. If it was an ice monster, the golden pearl would definitely be able to make ice. As a great magician, she could make a small amount of ice herself, but it was not worth it to rely on her personal magic to make ice and sell it. Although it was a pity, List said encouragingly, it's already very good. This hot summer, with the golden pearl, I believe life will be much better. Have you named it? Please name it, Lord Viscount. Yes. List thought for a moment and asked, since it can adjust the temperature, can it increase the temperature in winter? Chris thought for a moment and said, although we believe that it is an ice attribute according to its nature, it is more like a constant temperature control. It's summer now, so it's cooling down. If it's winter, it should be able to warm up. She and Glanny didn't think of this when they reported earlier. They only thought that the golden pearl could be used for refrigeration. After List's question, he realized that since it could be cooled in the summer, why couldn't it be heated in the winter? After all, its temperature adjustment range was from 4 to 10 degrees Celsius. Of course, the temperature measurement was only based on List's feelings. There was no thermometer here. This way, it has a wider range of uses. It can be used for cooling and heating. List was very satisfied with this point. Pure refrigeration effect was limited. Refrigeration and heating were good air conditioners. Since it is a constant adjustment of temperature, then let's call it the warming divine pearl. Black pearls could be made into wind-calming divine pearls. Pink pearls could be made into water-calming divine pearls. Gold pearls could be made into water-calming divine pearls. All 3 kinds of pearls had strong effects. This made him very pleased. It was the best news he had heard in a while. There are sea monster pearl shells in Blue Dragon Island's Tranquil Lake. They can produce white pearls, but they only have the simple effect of calming the mind. Compared to the 3 kinds of pearls produced in my territory, they are far inferior. In particular, the black pearls themselves had the effect of calming the mind, which was much better than the white pearls. He cooperated with Levis and Rolia. They had already sold the black pearls to many noble ladies in the Grand Duchy. They had earned a lot of gold coins. Unfortunately, the black pearls had been sold out. If he wanted to collect them again, he would have to wait for at least a year and a half. As for the large black pearls, it would probably take decades or even hundreds of years to grow. However, the old black giant clams all lived in the deep sea. As long as they appeared in the Pearl Lake, he could make a big profit. The technique of collecting and planting pearls had already been explored. Could not harm the life of the black giant clams. This was an industry that could be developed for a long time. He collected his thoughts. He asked Chris and Glanny, how big is the range of the warming divine pearl? According to the standard of this golden pearl, it is the size of a 30 square meter room. Well, it's a little small, List grumbled before saying, I'll provide you with more golden pearls, and you can take some time to make them into divine warming beads. When the time comes, you can install a batch in the Magus Tower, and I'll need to equip the rest in my Thorn Castle. Glanny was the main force in making magic equipment. He immediately nodded and said, "Please rest assured, Lord Viscount. Leave the matter of making the warming divine pearls to me." The golden-lipped clam was a sea monster that could release ordinary magic water bomb. The most suitable collector was the siren Chi, but Chi had been studying nature magic recently, so List did not disturb her. Instead, he rode the seven-colored whale Lolth and swam to the golden-lipped clam habitat near Stony Island. He looked for a large golden-lipped clam, approached it, and lured it with food. When the golden-lipped clam opened its shell, he stuffed a fire dragon bone into it at lightning speed, resisting the golden-lipped clam's defense, and then held up the shield to resist the water bomb it released. He quickly cut open the film wrapped around the golden pearl and took out the golden pearl. He stuffed in a grain of sand and pulled back the fire dragon bone. In this way, the golden-lipped clam would be fine, and it could continue to breed golden pearls. Sea monsters had a strong resilience, and as long as they didn't mess around, they basically wouldn't die. Shellfish such as the golden-lipped clam and the black giant clam could all be dealt with in this way. The real difficulty was the pink conch. There was no way to remove the pink pearl without killing the pink conch. And so on. List obtained 15 golden pearls in an hour. He calculated that it should be enough to meet the needs. There were no more than 10 rooms in the castle that needed to be installed with the warming divine pearls, and 5 more rooms were installed in the Mage Tower, which would use exactly 15. As for the one in his hand, he could give it to Chi and let her play with it and study it. The main reason was that the golden-lipped clam population was small, and the number of qualified golden pearls the size of eggs was even smaller. Otherwise, List would have definitely collected them in large quantities, made them into warming divine pearls, and sold them to the outside world, earning a lot of gold coins to buy supplies. It seemed that good luck had returned. The good news of the golden pearl had just been digested. Chapter 584. Clothing in this world was obviously not as developed as in the Earth era. According to the different materials used to make clothing, it was divided into ordinary clothing and magic equipment. Magic equipment was obviously only affordable for noble knight. For example, List's red cloak with black background and golden edges was magic equipment. There was also his 6-headed sea serpent king leather armor and other magic equipment made from World of Warcraft materials, which could be used as clothing or equipment. As for ordinary clothing, the best was naturally the fur type. Fur clothing made from precious fur, mink fur, fox fur, and the like were exclusive to nobles. In addition, ordinary nobles generally wore woolen clothing, which was cloth woven from wool. They generally wore down clothing such as goose down and duck down to keep out the cold. Commoners mostly wore linen and cotton clothing. He had never seen people raising silkworms, so naturally, there would be no such products as silk. When List saw the green wool textile of the green caterpillar, he immediately thought of silk. It was light, transparent, smooth, and felt like a layer of yarn. The green wool textile was not as comfortable as real silk, but it was still a superior silk textile. After rinsing, the color had also greatly improved. It was no longer green and shiny, but only a faint green. Very good textile, let's call it silk. List once again used the name of a fake and replaced the name of the real thing. Of course, there was no silk in this world, so it was not a big deal to call green wool textile silk. The name was just a code for him to distinguish and remember. Yes, my lord. Let the textile workshop quickly make a few sets of silk clothes for me. Summer is obviously suitable for wearing silk. The green caterpillar reproduced very quickly, and mallard ducks and flamingos only ate the green caterpillar, not the green fur. So every time he went to the mangrove forest to feed, he could harvest a pile of green fur left by the ducks and flamingos. It was transported to the textile workshop and spun a large amount of silk. This would undoubtedly be a specialty. He believed that the nobles were very interested in this light, cool, and breathable fabric. Even in the summer, Nobles had to dress neatly in frac habit and wear a ruffled collar around their necks when attending banquets. If silk was used to make clothes, it would be at least 3 times more comfortable. Perhaps the greater nobles had a way to cool down, but the lesser nobles would definitely go crazy for silk. Liszt calculated in his heart. The price of green hair silk should be more expensive than down jackets. In order to meet the needs of more aristocrats, I should let Nami work hard to sow more mangrove forests along the coast of Black Horse Island to raise green caterpillars. It's best if the green caterpillars can be raised artificially. Just like raising silkworms, the efficiency of raising green caterpillars should be significantly improved. At that time, the green caterpillar only needed to eat, drink, and sleep. When it matured, it would be thrown to the mallard ducks and flamingos to eat, and the leftover green feathers would be recycled. Just follow this routine and let Gord arrange people to carry it out. Just as he thought of this, he suddenly paused. There was a huge shortage of serfs in the territory. The green caterpillar breeding obviously required a large number of serfs, and it was estimated that there was no way to do it now. He still had to wait for the development order to welcome a leap in development for the territory. Speaking of the development order, Liszt soon received a message from the Knight of Tulip Castle. The Count invited him to go to Tulip Castle for a family dinner. The reason was that the Count had received a notice from the court to go to the Blue Dragon Island and gather at the Blue Sky Palace for a court meeting. Compared to previous years, this year's meeting time was much earlier. So that day, Liszt rode the chocobo Loki and quickly rushed to Tulip Castle. Loki's speed was getting faster and its endurance was greatly enhanced. It was obviously still growing. However, to Liszt's regret, it never learned a third magic. As an intermediate dragon in World of Warcraft, it was indeed undignified to only know 2 kinds of magic. Maybe the power of the blood fruit was not enough. That would make it a half-baked middle-level dragon. Liszt, you came so fast. Brother Levis greeted him at the door. After letting the servant take the chocobo away, Liszt replied, I have the chocobo Loki. It only takes 40 minutes to get here from the flower town. I really envy you. You don't lack mounts in the water or in the sky, and you even have a blue-blooded horse as a gift from the Grand Duke. Brother, when you advance to a Sky Knight, you will have everything. You should be soon, right? Liszt and Levis walked side by side into the castle and asked. Levis showed a reserved smile. It is indeed soon. I have already touched the bottleneck, but for the time being, I am still preparing to break through. Your Earth Codex has been a great help to my cultivation. I have to admit that you are amazing in terms of comprehension in chi cultivation. It is good that I can help you. Just as he entered the living room and sat down, the pregnant Loria personally brought him a cup of pure milk tea. Everyone in Tulip Castle knew Liszt's taste. He would either drink green tea or milk tea without meat, eggs, and other ingredients. She said with a smile, Sir Father and Madame Marie are in the Coral City dealing with this quarter's taxes. They should be back soon. Grandmother and Lavera have already sent someone to invite them. You and Levis can chat first. Lytton is also in the castle. I will also call him over. Liszt took the milk tea. Thank you. You are pregnant, so leave these matters to the servants. The child in your belly is the most important. Levis said, It is only because you are here that Loria can do these things. Others can't enjoy it. He turned to Loria and showed a gentle expression. Hurry up. Don't tire yourself. Liszt doesn't care about these cliches. Let's sit down and chat. Also, there is no need to call Lytton. He is just a child, what can he say? After Loria sat down, she said to the butler, Mr. Silva, please call Lytton. Liszt quietly tasted the milk tea. He had no interest in the daily intrigues of Tulip Castle. After the butler went to call Lytton, he seemed to remember and said, That's right, my territory has recently produced a very special cloth. I brought a batch for you to make clothes. The servant quickly brought over a piece of blue silk. He handed it to Loria to taste. As a woman, Loria had learned needlework at the Oxhorn Academy and naturally knew the quality of the cloth. After rubbing it for a moment, her eyes lit up, smooth, light, breathable, and very comfortable to the touch. Moreover, The color of the cloth is also very beautiful, flickering with a faint green color. The valet Thomas explained, "This is called silk, young madam." "Silk? List, what is the value of this cloth?" Loria asked keenly. She had already sensed the commercial value of the blue silk. "I don't think it should be cheaper than high-quality down, but the specific price has not been calculated for the time being. After all, the production capacity of the territory is not up to standard, and silk cannot be mass-produced in the near future. I just took a part of it and gave it to you to make summer clothes. Is there anything we can help with?" "Not for the time being. Wait until the production of blue silk stabilizes. Then we'll talk." "Okay." Loria was not disappointed and still said happily, "The silk feels really comfortable. This summer, we don't have to wear those suffocating full-body skirts." Levis also touched the silk and exclaimed, "I want to use it to make a few sets of frac abiyar for myself. The woolen frac abiyar is a disaster in the summer, and that damn ugly frac is like a hot water bag around my neck." While chatting, Lytton quickly rushed over. When he saw List, he greeted him obediently. "Brother List, you're here." List responded with a then cast magic eyes and looked at the other's chi level. It was quite rich. In the past few months, Madame Marie should have accumulated a lot of resources for him. But just a glance. He didn't care. Chapter 585. This chapter is Jade Flower Lover. More updates. Even though he didn't like Lytton, List still answered his questions when he asked him questions about his cultivation. Speaking of which, the reason why he did not like Lytton was mostly because of the memory of his predecessor. In his memory, Lytton did not like his predecessor, and his predecessor also disliked Lytton. However, with the broadening of his horizons, his mentality gradually became detached, and he no longer cared about the intrigue between the so-called brothers and sisters. In fact, he was looking forward to Lytton being promoted to a Sky Knight. If the Tulip family had 4 Sky Knights, it would be interesting. After all, if he wanted to build a country, the family would be a good help. After a while, Lavera had accompanied Madame Penelope to the castle. The first thing the old lady said when she saw List was, "When you go back, remember to go to my castle and pick up a potted plant to take back." "Grandmother, how many new potted plants have you cultivated?" List asked with a smile. "The black nightshade sprite worm, the fig sprite worm, and the green ingot sprite worm." The heritage of the 3 sprite worms completely made Madame Penelope indulge in her own potted plants. Perhaps she used to use potted plants as a gimmick to reduce gift spending, but now there was an atmosphere of madness. She had sincerely believed that the potted plants she cultivated had a very high probability of producing sprite worms. Talking about potted plants, she seemed particularly excited. "I've recently been fascinated by a batch of succulents. I found that they are very easy to raise. Each pot is healthy, fat, and tender. My cactus is about to bloom. Then I will definitely take away a pot." The subsequent topics were all idle chatter. First, they talked about the green silk. Everyone was full of praise for this fabric. It was only a matter of time before the aristocrats went crazy. Then they talked about several new stage plays performed by the Black Horse Island Drama Company, which had now become a must-see repertoire for the aristocrats of Coral City. Many burlesque teams began to imitate the Black Horse Island Drama Company and gradually switched to stage plays. However, they mainly copied the plays of the Black Horse Island Drama Company and had no original ability. It was not an easy task to adapt a classic play. Only List would occasionally have the leisure to choose a suitable night novel and let Avril Mask adapt it. There was no other way. In the entire Coral Island, he was probably the one who read the most night novels. He had the authority to say how the night novel should be adapted, and he knew what kind of plot people liked. In the evening, the Count and his wife finally returned from Coral City, and not long after, the banquet began. At the banquet, the Count talked about the preparations for this year's expansion order. According to the messenger of the court, the Grand Duke might be preparing to launch a longer expansion order this year. Now that you and I are both Sky Knights, and with the Blizzard Beast squad attacking the city, I believe that the merit we can compete for will not be worse than those marquises. He said smugly, In order to take the initiative in the fight for the title, this year's expansion order can no longer be low-key. Last year, after the Orders of Chivalry captured a Count's castle, the Coral Island Orders of Chivalry did not continue the campaign for fear of attracting attention. In case of multiple Sky Knights besieged, it would be difficult for William Lee to resist. But this year there was List. Others may not know, but William Lee knew very well that List's combat power was far greater than his. If the two joined forces, they could cope with the general situation. So, if it was time to be high profile, it was time to be high profile. List nodded and said, "I will do my best to help you fight for merit, but I hope that the family fleet can support me in transporting serfs. My territory is being vigorously developed and needs a large number of serfs. This year's expansion order will mainly accept serfs." "How many serfs are you going to transport?" "At least 20,000. If we can get a lot of food, I hope to transport 30,000 serfs back." Black Horse Island had a lot of industries. With the potential of the territory's development, 100,000 people could easily digest it. However, the main constraint was food. Farming and fishing alone obviously could not make up for the food gap. Today, the territory has more than 30,000 people, and the food consumed every day was just enough to fill their stomachs. In order to transport 20,000 serfs back, it would have to be raised from various aspects. The potential of seafood could continue to be squeezed. Kelp and giant algae were edible. Giant algae did not taste good, but at least they could replace livestock feed. Coupled with the mass production of single-masted sailboats, there were more and more offshore fishing. It was not good to eat fish alone, but it could be exchanged with Tulip Castle for food. In short, in the calculation of the territory officials, 20,000 more serfs would not cause a famine in the territory. But more would not work. A large amount of food must be transported from other places. The Count was surprised. "You want to transport 30,000 serfs? This is not a small number. The territory of Jonas and Trick has a total population of 60,000 and 50,000. You have been developing for less than a year and your population is going to surpass them. Can the territory really absorb them?" At present, the territory has a population of more than 35,100 people. It will not be a problem to accommodate another 20,000 people. As long as there is food, 30,000 is a small matter. It is good that you have confidence. I will arrange for the family fleet to tilt the main transport capacity to you. At this time, Levis interjected, "List, your Black Horse Island has accumulated a lot of two-masted cargo ships. You can merge with the family fleet and go together." "My fleet is too small. At present, there are only 15 ships. At least 7 ships should be left to meet the territory's cargo needs. I can only send 8 ships to merge with the family fleet. 8 ships is also a lot of capacity. Then it's settled." So, until the end of the banquet, the Count held this family banquet mainly to communicate with List, and then he would have the confidence to go to the Blue Sky Palace to discuss how to participate in the development order. In the evening, the father and son chatted alone for a while in the study. The main content was the Count asking, "List, how is your strength improving? I feel that I have made great progress. Every day I reach a new level. My current strength should be far beyond the Sky Knight of perfection level. When I was hunting the boot-billed stork, it was not very difficult." "You are already so strong?" "Yes, does father need to think about it?" "Forget it." The Count coughed and changed the subject. "Speaking of this boot-billed stork, I think it should have hunted the purple sand crocodile on the island. I went to see the habitat of the purple sand crocodile, and there were traces of a fierce battle. I was waiting for the purple sand crocodile to breed, but I didn't want to be destroyed in the mouth of this big bird. Although the meat eventually fell into List's mouth, the purple sand crocodile was indeed killed by the boot-billed stork. List just watched. His conscience was slightly uneasy. He thought about it and said, "If there is a chance, I will go to the mainland forest and find a suitable World of Warcraft and catch one for you, father." The Count raised his eyebrows. "I have troubled you. It is my duty." Chapter 586. This chapter is a reward for the Alliance Master, glorious warsong celebration. The Alliance Master has rewarded too much and Old White has been squeezed dry. Miserable. After resting for one night in Tulip Castle, List went to Madame Penelope's small castle the next day as agreed and picked potted plants from her balcony to bring back. However, after releasing magic eyes and carefully inspecting them, he regrettably found that none of the potted plants showed signs of magic retroaction. None of the potted plants contained sprite worms. But he still let the servant carry away a potted plant that looked like many small stones. These are stone flowers. Look at how beautiful they are. Every small stone that cracks open is a stone flower. There are a total of 25 in this pot. May the glory of the night watch over you. One of them may give birth to a sprite, my handsome young man. Madame Penelope kindly blessed him. She used to think that List looked too much like Melissa Longtaro, a woman she hated. But now, the more she looked at List, the more handsome she felt. He brought a pot of stone flowers. List said goodbye to Madame Penelope. On the way, he looked at the stone flowers. Each stone flower was like a stone with two split petals, with rounded edges. Between the two petals, a flower grew. The color of the flower was different from the color of the stone. It was very peculiar. Back in Flower Town, he handed the potted plants to the butler Carter and asked the other party to arrange for someone to take care of the potted plants. He certainly wouldn't waste his energy on a useless potted plant. There doesn't seem to be anything worth worrying about recently. I should go write speculations on the correlation between weave nodes, sprites, and dragons, and strive to finish writing this masterpiece of magic theory to establish my position as a theoretical archmage. Standing in the study with the calming bead. The town could be seen in the distance. The town was bustling with activity. Many merchants in messy clothes were walking freely in the town. The establishment of a trade town was beginning to show results. There were also many serfs pushing wheelbarrows to transport goods on the streets of the town. The wheelbarrows were List's secret tool, but they were exposed very quickly. There was nothing to be done about it. The technical content of a wheelbarrow was not much, and one could basically figure out the general principle at a glance. After all, everyone had seen horse carriages and handcarts before, so they weren't unfamiliar with the structure of a cart. It was just that the two wheels had been replaced with a single wheel. As early as Black Horse Island had just popularized the wheelbarrow, there were carpentry workshops on Coral Island that began to imitate it, and now there are wheelbarrows in use in every city of Coral Island. Therefore, there was no point in keeping the wheelbarrow a secret anymore. In the castle, there were servants carrying buckets of water to the nearby well to fetch water. Since the arrival of the drilling engineer Fred Wellbore, a well had been drilled in each town. Naturally, a well had also been drilled next to the Flower Town's castle. The servants no longer had to go to town to fetch water. The once shabby and poor town is now thriving. I feel quite accomplished. List's heart rippled with excitement. Strictly speaking, my personal role seems to be negligible. Most of the achievements came from the smoke mission. Touch your conscience and think. Even though he had always prided himself on being a genius, the son of glory, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, the youngest Sky Knight, and the youngest Dragon Knight, in List's heart, he did not feel that he was really a genius. He was just an ordinary office worker before crossing over. After crossing over, he would not immediately become a strategist or a martial arts genius. Similarly, he did not want to arm himself with red theories and change the world in a different world. He just quietly integrated into the aristocratic class, enjoying a luxurious life and silently striving for the great cause of dragon riding. Most of the time, he drifted with the current and followed the smoke missions. He rarely had any long-term plans or a perfect development layout. Usually, he did whatever he thought of. In place of a strong executor, he might have already begun to overthrow the rule of the Sapphire family. List, on the other hand, only had the title of Viscount and enjoyed the flattery of the people. Of course, everyone had their own way of life. List did not feel that he was a great man, nor did he feel that the poor people of a different world needed him to save them. Just like when he lived on Earth and saw the news of China funding Africa, he was angry. There was a bunch of poor people in his own country and he still had time to care about Africa. Although the country had strategic considerations at the national level, in order to obtain resources, they had to fund poor African countries. But as an individual, his vision was not high, and he only saw his own people. Crossing over to a different world. It was difficult to establish a sense of identity. What he cared about was the people around him who were worth cherishing, and there was no one else. His concern for the serfs was more out of sympathy. It was inevitable that he could not bear to see others suffering. Hee. Shaking the cup full of milk in his hand, he shook these thoughts out of his mind. I didn't expect that I would start to be sentimental. I haven't even ridden the little fire dragon Leo yet. Where would I have time to be sentimental? Thinking. Summoning the smoke mission. The mission was still the same. The 5 kinds of abandoned worms had not yet been properly placed. The golden thread fungus, Hericium arenaceus, and horse's ass had all been built and planted. The black truffle greenhouse was chosen in Horsetown, located between 2 hills, where the climate was slightly drier and suitable for the growth of black truffles. Only the blue matsutake had not yet been chosen where to build the greenhouse. In fact, the serfs who planted the blue matsutake were also very anxious. They searched all corners of Black Horse Island and did not find a suitable place to plant it. After several urging from Liszt, Thornstown was reluctantly selected as the planting site. By the time the blue matsutake greenhouse was built, it was already late June. At this time, the smoke mission was finally completed. Mission completed? Reward a stone flower sprite worm. Huh? Seeing the reward of the mission, Liszt was shocked. Really? Do I have magic? Am I possessed by the power of the smoke dragon? Or is Madame Penelope possessed by the smoke mission? Black nightshade sprite worm, fig sprite worm, green ingot worm, and now a stone flower sprite worm. Without a doubt, among the 25 stone flower potted plants, he found the stone flower worm stalk that was in the process of blossoming and breeding sprite worms. Liszt shook his head. He didn't bother to think about who was the son of glory. He directly decided in his heart, in the future, I, Liszt, will take care of Madame Penelope's potted plants. The smoke had slowly reorganized into a new serpentine. Mission. The original name of Flower Town came from the discovery of a new variety of tulip. Now there are only a small number of red tulip Sundance and yellow tulip William I left here, and they are gradually withering. Please investigate the cause of the red and yellow tulips withering and solve it. Reward, 2 sprite worms. Liszt's eyes lit up and he smiled. This was a familiar formula. According to the situation of the previous smoke missions, the withering red and yellow tulip was undoubtedly breeding sprite worms. Chapter 587. Stone flower potted plants need to be carefully cared for so as not to miscarry the sprite worm. However, Liszt did not pay too much attention to it. The reason was simple. Stone flower had no magic ingredient and had no output. In the first place, it was purely an ornamental plant. At most, with the cordyceps, it could raise the quality of ordinary stone flowers and sell them for a higher price when they were potted. Like the Venus flytrap that he kept around the castle to catch flies, it was ornamental but not practical. Liszt now focused more on the 2 tulip worms waiting to be bred. The planting of black tulip was inseparable from tulip worms. The flower farm was not large. In addition to more than 100 acres of black tulip, there were 20 acres of red Sundance tulip and more than 10 acres of yellow William I tulip. Both varieties were discovered after coming to Coral Island. One commemorates the ancestor Dennis Tile and the other commemorates William Lee, who was conferred the title of Earl. As ordinary tulip, their biggest role was to make dried tulip flowers, relying on their strong fragrance to resist the smell of feces and urine in the city. However, under his rule, there was no problem of feces and urine, so there was no need for dried tulip flowers. In addition, the serfs of Flower Town were transferred to Black Horse Island, causing the serfs of the flower farm to be busy with the black tulip fields every day and ignore Sundance and William I tulip. By the time Liszt came to inspect, some of the red and yellow tulip plants had withered. Sir Lord, Lehman did not notice that Sundance and William I tulip had withered. Please punish him, Sir Lord. The steward of the flower farm looked annoyed and frightened. According to the rules of the territory, any abnormal phenomenon in the crops must be reported to the administrative office as soon as possible. Punishment was certainly necessary, but List had long stopped caring about this kind of thing. There were town officials who punished the negligence of the stewards. List only cared about the sprite worms. He used magic eyes to search around. After some effort, he found 2 stalks of magic feedback in the field with dim light. The 2 stalks of worm grass were obviously malnourished, and their leaves were a little yellow and curly. Fertilize and water them immediately. Provide sufficient nutrients for these 2 cordyceps. List immediately ordered. Administrative official Isaiah, who had already rushed over, asked in astonishment, "Sir, these 2 tulip plants have already bred sprite worms?" Of course. List was also dissatisfied with Isaiah. If there was no smoke mission prompt, the serfs would have been aware of the problem and the sprite worm would have already aborted. He couldn't help but sternly reprimand him. "Isaiah, I know you're busy as the town's administrative officer. However, the mutated crops must be taken seriously. This has always been a strict rule that I have set. As an administrative officer, you must be vigilant at all times and check on the crops frequently." Isaiah said shamefully, "Sir, please punish me." List did not hesitate. "Deduct half a month's salary. Next time, don't make this mistake. Although the flower town has a foothold in trade, but the slightest movement of crops is still the most important government affairs. Don't worry, sir. Isaiah will definitely remember this lesson and won't be negligent again." The cause of the withering of the tulip had been investigated. Now, it was only a matter of solving the problem and restoring the withering, and the mission would be completed. List did not keep an eye on the mission. Recently, his work had gradually become busy. The Count had already gone to the Blue Sky Mountain Palace to discuss this year's expansion orders. As a Viscount Lord, he naturally needed to train his troops and prepare for the orders of chivalry. There were currently a total of 77 Earth Knights in the fief. List planned to select 60 Knight squads and organize them into 5 Knight squads to accompany him to the battlefield, including an elite Earth Knight squad. The rest of the Earth Knights were handed over to the patrol squad leader Paris to maintain the security of the fief. Just after he announced the list of knights selected for the battlefield, the young and immature Emily petitioned him, "Sir, please allow Emily to follow you to the battlefield and participate in this year's expansion order war." The 12-year-old Emily gradually grew to more than 1.6 meters tall. At the beginning of last year, she was only 1.5 meters tall. In just a year, she had grown more than 10 centimeters. In the future, she would definitely not be short. Moreover, her deep eye sockets and high nose bridge had become more and more outstanding. She was a beauty in the making. It was just that she trained too hard and her skin was tanned. "You are only 12 years old, why are you going to the battlefield?" List refused. He was prepared to train Emily to become a female Sky Knight and did not want her to fall on the battlefield. Emily insisted, "Sir, the battlefield is the best place for a knight to train. Emily can already feel her training speed slowing down and needs new pressure to stimulate herself. Slowing down is a normal phenomenon. A 12-year-old Earth Knight, you have already shown more talent than many nobles." "But Emily is a female." "What about a female?" Emily clenched her teeth and replied, "Sir, Emily has asked Leader Paris before. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire rarely has an outstanding female knight. Once a female's menstrual period arrives, it will greatly affect the progress of combat energy training. Leader Paris said that menstrual periods usually occur at 14 years old. At that time, combat energy training will definitely be delayed, so her meaning was self-evident. She hoped to solidify her foundation before her menstrual period so that she could keep up with the male geniuses in the future. A female's menstrual period could not be avoided. Bleeding once a month would indeed seriously affect combat energy training. The depletion of the menstrual period can be replenished with magic potions. Don't worry, you have such great talent. I will do my best to train you. There is no need to rush. Going to the battlefield at the age of 12 and still a little girl was indeed too cruel. Emily knelt on one knee and said solemnly, "Sir, Emily thanks you for your concern. Meeting you is the most precious honor of Emily's life. You did not hesitate to spend so many resources to help me train. Emily does not want to become useless and not be able to repay your kindness." Before List could speak to comfort her, she continued, "Only the battlefield can carve out a powerful knight. Sir, you emitted a dazzling light in 2 wars and became the Grand Duchy's youngest Sky Knight. Emily also has ambitions. She hopes to become the Grand Duchy's first female Sky Knight." After saying that, she knelt on both knees and kowtowed, performing the greatest courtesy a serf could give to a lord. "Sir, please allow Emily to go to the battlefield." She persisted in her thoughts. She hoped to solidify her foundation during the 2 years before her menstrual period arrived. Only then would she have the confidence to advance to Sky Knight. She could already faintly feel her chest itching. This was a sign of puberty. According to Paris, a woman's menstrual period would arrive after 2 years of breast development. She still had 2 years of time to quickly train without wasting any time. Although the body of a 12-year-old girl was still flat, the luster she emitted was so bright. List calmly gazed at her for a full 30 seconds, then faintly said, "The Grand Duchy's first female Sky Knight, persevere for the future. I have no reason to oppose you going to the battlefield. However, Emily, my youngest follower, please be prepared to die on the battlefield." Chapter 588. Emily was incorporated into a knight squad. As a female knight and such a young knight, it was indeed a bit troublesome. She had no independent financial support, and List arranged for her to buy weapons and hire squires. If it weren't for the genius suggested by the smoke mission, List would not have bothered with her based on the potential she showed. In his current position, he no longer needed to give preferential treatment to his followers. On the contrary, the followers had to try their best to show themselves in front of him. Everyone knew that if they followed List, they would definitely gain a lot of battle merits. She was the most promising viscount in the Grand Duchy. The Earl was the lowest limit and the Marquis was also normal. However, Emily was named by the smoke mission, and she believed that the power of fate would not pull the thread and let List pay attention to a loser. Perhaps the first female Sky Knight of the Grand Duchy will be the future Emily. Since then, Emily and the Knight Squad continued to drill on the Black Horse Ranch on Black Horse Island. She practiced the Knight's battle formation and was ready to charge against the enemy knight at any time. She needed to constantly improve her combat effectiveness. Even if she had a great advantage on the battlefield and was well protected, there would still be the possibility of death. She was not like List, who was secretly protected by Paris. On the battlefield, List would not bother to protect her. Survival meant growth. If he died, it meant that List's investment failed. That was all. Charge! Marcus rode his horse and commanded half of the orders of chivalry to crash on the grassland, and his chi was connected. If List were to observe with magic eyes, he would find that the knights were wrapped in a colorful mist of magic power. This surging chi disturbed all the free magic in the air. It made the magician useless. The powerful elite orders of chivalry unleashed waves of warrior energy. Even if a Sky Knight rushed in, he would be drowned in the waves of warrior energy and eventually be trampled to death. Of course, the Sky Knight would not be foolish enough to face the charging orders of chivalry head-on. The Sky Knight had his own way of fighting sword fighting. Ha! Ha! In the team, Emily's flat body under her armor was already drenched in sweat, but her expression was extremely focused. When she cultivated her Do Chi alone, she could feel that her cultivation speed had stagnated. She was no longer as carefree as before. However, he was overwhelmed with emotions as he charged with the knight. She also felt that new combat aura was constantly emerging in her body. That was the food that Sir Lord was providing for her, providing her with a steady stream of nutrients. For the Lord's nurturing, charge! With excitement in her heart, Emily suddenly sprinted with her spear. The Thunder Attribute combat aura was even sharper under the blessing of the battle formation, piercing the air and producing a crackling sound. This time, she could clearly feel that her power had increased by another 5%. This is progress. Charging on the training ground can make me make such great progress. What kind of motivation will the pressure bring me when I go to the real battlefield during the orders of expansion? It was not clear for the time being, but she was looking forward to it. Dodo Island Crater. List was also training. The little fire dragon Leo turned into a ball of magic and condensed in his chest. One by one, the potions were swallowed by List and then absorbed by Leo, transforming into impurities that improved the nature of his dragon Do Chi. In List's view, although the magic that improved his dragon Do Chi belonged to the impurities absorbed by Leo, it was far more condensed than the magic of the potions. As long as he continued to transform and improve it over a long period of time, sooner or later, his dragon Do Chi would synchronize with the fire dragon magic and reach the same extreme nature. At that time, perhaps his attack would not be extinguished for thousands of years. Just like in some novels, the sword of a peerless master left a strong sword intent in the air that could still kill people after thousands of years. Sooner or later, I will probably become a master who comprehended the sword intent of the fire attribute. Of course, to exert the sword intent, that is, the extreme nature of the magic, there were probably many restrictions. Judging from the magic power that Leo was releasing, every time he spat or fanned the flames, they were formed by ordinary magic power, which was only slightly stronger than a mage's fire magic. The real magic of the fire dragon was stored in its body and would not leak out at will. Even his body was formed by the extreme nature of the fire dragon magic, so he could freely switch between flesh and blood and the form of magic. So, dragons usually hunted and fought. They should use ordinary attacks, and only in a battle of life and death would they release the sword intent. For example, in the Empire of Light, there was a howling wind valley, where the magic of the wind dragon was engraved. It was the residue of a battle of life and death between a wind dragon and a magic shooter. After thousands of years, it could still set off a gale. Usually, when the wind dragon lived freely, it would certainly not leave any magic. Otherwise, wherever it went, there would be storms everywhere. Sooner or later, the entire continent would be polluted by these elemental dragons, metal dragons, gem dragons, and even sacred dragons. The fact was that there were very few traces of the life of dragons, which could be said to be rare. The metal mines and gem mines formed by magic were what most people yearned for. Dragon magic refinement. It went on and on. List could feel his dragon's battle chi growing stronger and stronger. Between the ups and downs of his heart, his thoughts were flying. The extreme nature of the dragon magic. If it is the key for a dragon to be able to freely switch between the form of magic and the body of flesh and blood, then, when my body is also full of the extreme nature of the dragon Do Chi, will I also be able to change? Vaguely, he felt that he had found out a lot about the training of the Dragon Knight. His cultivation continued, and so did his thoughts. Are all dragons able to change their forms at will? Or is there something unusual about the little fire dragon Leo? Unfortunately, there was no reference standard, and List could not be sure. But now, it seemed that Leo did not show too much difference. It should be said that he was similar to the arrogant dragons described in the night novels. They did not let people ride them. Only those who had the aura of the main character were excluded. In many night novels, dragons would take the initiative to let the main character ride them. According to this standard, List did not have the aura of the main character. Since there is no more evidence of Leo's mutation, I should treat him as an ordinary fire dragon. According to the theory of the Magic Network nodes, elves, and dragons that I just finished writing in the Magic Network system, the dragon is an interactive node between the laws of magic and the laws of physics, switching between the form of magic and the body of flesh and blood at will. Obviously, it was the transformation of magic and matter which matched his theory. So, he thought again. Perhaps the path of training of the Dragon Knight is to turn itself into a node in the Magic Network, mastering the laws of physics and magic at the same time? This was a bold guess. Chapter 589. This chapter is a reward for the Alliance Master, High Wind Colt. It will be 1 chapter for now and 10 more chapters in the future. Proving the dragon will require more time to explore. Now List wanted to develop a new training method in addition to the dragon demonic chi refinement and dragon breath to quickly increase his strength. The wonderful feeling of increasing strength was intoxicating. Every time he finished training with Leo, he would feel a double sense of comfort in his soul and body. He felt that he had greatly improved compared to before he started training. Unfortunately, no one could test his strength, so he had a vague idea of what realm his strength had increased to. Compared to the Lich Bull Marquis, he had no conclusion as to whether he was stronger or weaker. This expansion order is my chance to test myself. As long as the Eagle Kingdom doesn't send out the Dragon Knight, I have nothing to fear. Leo had already rushed out of his body, turned into a ball of flame, and condensed his body from the flame. He slowly landed beside List. He let out an increasingly mighty roar. "Stop roaring, here's some beef." List took out the prepared secret steaks for Leo to eat. There was also a lot of World of Warcraft meat to supplement his nutrition. Then he moved his hands up and down, caressing and brainwashing him at the same time. He didn't know how other Dragon Knights became partners with dragons and rode them. He could only use his own method and rely on years of brainwashing to completely subdue Leo. Leo was still young, and it was the best time to shape the correct views of dragons. When he grew up, these views would be unbreakable. The first few training sessions, Leo was very impatient with his nagging, but now he was used to it. Occasionally, he would raise his head and respond with roar. When he no longer resisted, it would be the moment when his brain was distorted. His heart and mind would be filled up by List bit by bit. Roar. He ate a large piece of steak and drank a can of milk. He comfortably took the initiative to rub against List's hand. What he didn't know was that List, who was muttering to himself, was thinking about something else. Leo can help me cultivate my dragon's do chi, and my strength far surpasses that of a sky knight. However, it's not a real dragon knight. It's still very young, with 100 years of infancy. It was impossible for him to wait for Leo to grow slowly. He would only ride a dragon when his hair had turned white. By that time, he would probably be too old to even fart, let alone become one with the dragon and release his do chi. Therefore, the Lord of Dragon City's plan was imperative. Should I share my lifespan with Leo and become the Fire Dragon's Lord? Or should I find another dragon? Apart from Leo, probably only the Invisible Dragon has some clues. The Invisible Dragon is likely to be a young dragon and has a long lifespan. Compared to the powerful Fire Dragon, he preferred to contract the Dragon Domain Lord with a production-type dragon. It was the best choice for Leo to ride and fight. Soon he shook his head. Am I worrying too early? I don't even have the skills to become a Dragon City Lord. How am I supposed to make a contract? I really regret killing Curtis Truth back then. She had the skills to become a Dragon City Lord, and even the Lich skills were probably provided by her. This genius of the magic goat family named Crazy Love, a young great wizard, was indeed very powerful. She had mastered the Dragon City Lord contract and the Lich transformation skills. Unfortunately, in order to avoid future troubles, List directly killed her in the Lich state. The Spectre ship collapsed, and even the remaining soul-sinking wood, the sheephead flag, and the ship's bow were used as firewood to revive the little fire dragon Leo. Basically, the corpses were destroyed. But fortunately, the Grand Duke definitely has the Dragon City Lord contract method in his hands. The Magic Goat family was destroyed by the Sapphire family, and all the skills were snatched by the Sapphire family. When I establish a country, can I exchange with them, or even directly overthrow the Sapphire family? If the Sapphire family did not come to snatch List's dragon, List was ready to find another place to establish a country. If the Sapphire family was jealous of his dragon, they would definitely fight and simply overthrow the Sapphire family. The future was still far away. The training ended, and so did the brainwashing. List returned to the cabin at the foot of the mountain and repaired it overnight. Early the next morning, he picked a lot of skull fruit seeds and hemp rope vine seeds, then rode the 7-colored whale loth back to Black Horse Island. Just at this time, The smoke mission was completed. Mission completed. Reward: 2 tulip sprite worms. Mission: the final blueprint of Thorn Castle has been completed, and groundbreaking is about to begin. Before building the main body of the castle, why not build the ancillary facilities step by step? Please dig out the castle's sea canal. Reward: a fish spring that gushes all year round. The mission was completed. The withered tulip returned to normal, and the 2 sprite worms thrived. A new mission also followed, requiring List to start building the castle. Now that the territory is in urgent need of serfs, I did not intend to build the castle so early. It seems that it came from my subconscious. The smoke mission is a projection of the combination of the power of fate and my subconscious. It reflects that I really want to build the castle. Black Horse Island was far away from the mainland. Apart from pirates, there was no danger of invasion. With the Coral Island to rely on, there was generally no danger of pirates. Behind the pirates were the great aristocrats of the country. In case his identity was exposed, it would be a forced war with Lee William. No great aristocrat would be stupid enough to oppose the father and son, Lee William and List, who had unlimited potential. Therefore, there was no problem with the castle being built later. However, List could not wait to build the castle in his mind. Enjoyment was even more important than development. Since the smoke mission has been issued, then let's build it. He immediately summoned Jemiah and other architects, as well as Gort and other officials, to discuss the construction of the castle. In the conference room of Port Town, Jemiah stood in front of a wall, drew the castle structure, and explained in detail. The main body of Thorn Castle is a 5-story building, divided into 3 parts. The main building, the left wing guard building, and the right wing guard building. The main building is 6 meters high, with a total height of 30 meters, plus a 10-meter guard tower, a total height of 40 meters. The style of Thorn Castle was similar to the neoclassical style of the White House, but the actual finished template was similar to that of the Capitol building. In addition to the main structure of the main building, the left wing guard building, and the right wing guard building, there would be a huge sea canal at the main entrance of the castle, connected to the sea, allowing his sea elves and a chi to enter and exit the castle at will. Even single-masted sailboats could directly pass through this canal to transport goods to Thorn Castle. At the end of the canal, a huge arch would be built to guard the safety of the sea canal. And a new lighthouse, far taller than the lighthouse in Black Horse Port, would be built on the side to point the way for the surrounding ships. In addition, there would be stables, pastures, carriage houses, wells, hedges, greenhouses, and other ancillary buildings. Of course, around Thorn Castle, a moat and walls must be built not to defend against enemies, but to prevent people from the island from sneaking into the castle. In this way, the construction of Thorn Castle was so huge that it would take far more than 1 or 2 years to complete. Even if the construction efficiency of the mixture of rubber, water, and bricks was excellent, it was still not easy. Jemiah postponed the construction of the main body of Thorn Castle and first dig out the sea canal. He finally decided. Chapter 590. This chapter is a reward for the leader low-key warsong. 1 chapter for now and 10 more chapters in the future. Digging the canal was not an easy task. However, the distance between Thorn Castle and the sea was less than 1 kilometer. This length of the canal was relatively easy to dig. For this kind of pure hard work, List once again raised the basic wage. Each serf had an additional copper coin on top of the original base wage. While the sea canal was being dug bit by bit, the drilling team led by Fred Welbore had completed the excavation of the second well in Mushroom Town. He was then transferred over to dig wells for Thorn Castle. There was no water source near Thorn Castle, so water could only be obtained from Port Town. However, with the castle being put into use, it was obviously not enough to meet the needs of so many people. A few days before the start of work, List often came to the construction site to check on the progress. He was very much looking forward to his castle with a name. Of course, they were only building ancillary facilities on the periphery of the castle. It would probably be more than half a year before the main building of Thorn Castle was completed. At the very least, it would be next year. Therefore, after going around the construction site a few times and not seeing any new progress, he gave up on this boring inspection and focused on other things. Achi's speed of deciphering nature magic was getting faster and faster. Regarding the planting magic of the magic plant seeds, she had basically deciphered most of it. However, many of the details of the planting magic were in the Sun language. Without a corresponding reference, it was difficult to accurately describe them, which stumped Achi. She now changed the subject and began to study druid magic related to fighting animals. The latest progress was the deciphering of a book called Cleansing Light City's Sun Tower Guide Construction Guide. This book mainly introduced a type of building of the Sun's child, the Sun Tower. According to the book, the Sun Tower drew the power of the sun and gave the entire city the power to grow. The city with the Sun Tower was called Cleansing Light City. Brother, the Sun Tower doesn't seem to be the same system as Druid magic. Druid magic originates from chaos magic, while the Sun Tower uses the power of the sun. Brother told Achi that the sun is a star that can emit powerful light and heat all the time. That's right. List nodded. He felt that this cleansed light city and Sun Tower sounded like they were using solar energy. It was indeed appropriate for the sun's child to use solar energy, but when it came to solar energy, he was somewhat puzzled. Achi, do you think there is any connection between solar energy and light attribute magic? Light magic power and solar energy. Coupled with the purchase of a portion from outside, the potions could basically be taken. The income from the sprite worms was also good. The alfalfa sprite worm had already been contracted. The stoneflower sprite worm had yet to be born, and the 2 tulip sprite worms were also in good health, which was equivalent to harvesting 4 sprite worms. 4 sprite worms in a month was definitely a high yield for the Viscount's fief. In particular, there were 2 tulip worms, which represented the production of a large number of potions. So it was. Time passed day by day, and in the blink of an eye July had arrived. After a busy week of battles, the canal to the sea had been completely dug, and List personally participated in the reinforcement of the canal embankment. The Blizzard Beast squad made their debut, with rock thorns piercing out on both sides of the river embankment to fix the embankment. Even the bottom of the canal was pierced by rock thorns, and then the surfs smashed the rock thorns and laid them flat on the bottom of the river. Basically, this navigation canal could not be crossed by a tsunami. Now all that was left was the riverbank railings, greenery, and walkways which needed to be built, but this was no longer within the scope of the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward. A fountain that gushes all year round. Gushes all year round. What does this mean? List was a little confused. The straightforward understanding of fountain was naturally a fountain that sprayed fish. But why did fish spurt out of the fountain? This problem did not bother List for long before it was replaced by the surprise brought by the new mission. Mission. 2 new tulip worms are about to arrive, bringing a great sense of crisis to another tulip worm that has lost most of its lifespan. It may have a premonition that it is about to drown in mediocrity. Although it has never been good enough, it still wants to try its best. Please inspire its courage. Reward. A sprite. Chapter 591. In the insect room of the nameless castle. List stood in front of a box covered with jade powder, looking at the lazily lying tulip sprite, feeling the anxiety in the little guy's heart. He could only encourage it with his own emotions as much as possible. Apart from that, there was no other effective means. It was just a sprite worm. It had simple emotions and did not have any intelligence or comprehension ability. The only thing it could communicate with was List's instructions through emotions. Otherwise, he would reach out and touch it to express his love. Wow! On the edge of the box, the thorny sprite Ella yawned and called out in boredom. It was the tyrant of the insect room. In the box on the right side of List, Mickey was counting the corn kernels he had collected. He did not like Ella, nor did he like to stick to List. His personality may not be as irritable as Ella, but he was relatively more independent and immersed in his own little world. Ella, Nami, Mickey, Fitz, Tam, and Eddie These sprites were very cute and condensed the essence of heaven and earth. He was also an independent individual with his own personality and thoughts. In fact, they did not have the concept of the same kind. Even sprites of the same genus did not regard each other as the same kind. Just like the giant kelp sprite Parker, the three giant kelp sprites Fitz, Tam, and Eddie probably had a bloodline connection. It was very likely that they were all sprites born from giant kelp derived from Parker's wormstalk. However, Parker was also very cruel to the three giant kelp sprites, without the slightest care for the younger generation. From List's point of view, sprites inherited the personality of plants and grew quietly and independently, unlike humans and animals, who had companions, families, and other feelings. Another example was the outgoing sprite Nami. Although she liked to make friends, she had the same mentality towards humans, elves, seven-colored whales, and ducklings. Just because the other party was an elf, it did not mean that they were of the same kind and should be friends. Wow! Ella cried again. It was so bored that it wanted List to play with it. However, List just waved his hand and let it play by itself. He was implementing the plan to stimulate Ella and deliberately showed indifference to Ella, making it angry and then exploding its evolutionary potential. Although it was cruel to Ella to be indifferent and enthusiastic, in order to help it evolve, List felt that this was the best way. The new plant's pheromones were of great help to the elves' evolution. He was also using the caravan to continuously collect plants of the same genus as the sprite wormstalks, striving to help the sprites obtain more pheromones. However, this was not enough. Most of the time, the elves had to work hard. For example, this tulip worm was born in Tulip Castle. It could be said that it had all the pheromones that other tulip elves had. However, whether it could evolve or not still depended on its own efforts. Without sufficient willpower to move forward, 10 years of lifespan would be over, and they might not even be able to enter the fat chrysalis stage. Ella saw that List was always staring at the tulip worm and gradually became dissatisfied. She shouted, "Wow! Move aside! Wow!" List paid no more attention to it. Ella called a few times and did not get a response. She angrily flew around the worm room. At this time, Mickey, who was counting the corn kernels, may have felt very annoyed and shouted at Ella, "Chirp!" This suddenly made Ella angry. She immediately flew in front of Mickey, clenched her small fist, and shouted, "Wow! Chirp! Wow! Chirp! Wow!" The two elves did not fight with each other, but their quarrel was quite fierce, and their saliva sprayed out. "Shut up and go back to your respective boxes. Don't come out and don't make a sound." List stared and shouted at the two elves. They did not dare to disobey the order. Ella flattened her mouth and flew back to her box. She closed the lid of the box and hid inside to sulk. But after a while she had fallen asleep. Although the elves were full of emotions, they were also relatively simple little creatures. On the other side, Mickey continued to count his corn kernels as if nothing had happened. Every time he came back from a trip, List would bring him a corn kernels. He liked to study corn kernels as if he had a hobby of collecting them. As long as there was free time, List would walk into the worm room, encourage the tulip worm, and let it evolve bravely. During this period, the reward of the previous smoke mission soon appeared, and the news came from the construction site of Thorn Castle. Gort sent someone to report to him. My lord, Mr. Fred, the driller, led the drilling team to drill for the castle. After breaking a rock, water began to spray from the ground. At the same time, a large number of small fish came out of the spout, and there were still small fish spewing out after fishing for thousands of pounds. There are really fish spewing out? List was already aware of the reward, but he was still a little surprised. It was rare to dig a well and dig out a fish spring. The fish spewed out like a fountain. So he immediately rode the colorful whale Lolth and set off for Black Horse Island. After arriving at the construction site, Gort quickly took him to the location of the well that had been fenced. My lord, this well is very magical. I have sent people to fish up to 3,000 pounds in a row, and the small fish in it have not decreased at all. Gort took the fishing net handed over by the clerk, which contained a few small fish that were still alive. These are the small fish spewed out of the well. No one has seen them before. The small fish were a bit similar to carp, but a little more slender, with a pale golden color, and looked very beautiful. They were between 15 centimeters and 25 centimeters in size, and the longest was no more than 30 centimeters. On average, each weighed about 4 or 5 tails. Are they sea fish? List looked at the small fish and asked. He thought it was possible that the wellspring connected to the sea through a passage, and the small fish in the sea were brought up. Otherwise, there was no way to explain the appearance of the fish spring. Gort replied, "It should be freshwater fish. The well water can be drunk directly, and the small fish are very adapted to the well water." The chef of the Port Town restaurant also came to get the ingredients. This small fish is not poisonous after cooking, and it tastes very good. The meat is delicate and delicious, and it is much better than sea fish. Freshwater fish, so it may be that there is an underground river under the basalt pillars of Black Horse Island, and these small fish grow in the underground river. List speculated. If it was not a passage connected to the sea, then it could only be an underground river. The underground river could be formed by the erosion of rain. However, Black Horse Island was a volcanic island, and the main structure was basalt pillars. It was really amazing to be able to form an underground river under the basalt pillars. This made him want to go deep into the underground river and find out what was going on. Consultant Gort, this well should not be used as a well. Dig a tunnel diagonally downward and guard the fish spring for fishing. In addition, send a knight with a strong diving ability to explore down the spring to see if the spring is connected to the underground river. Underground river. Gort did not understand. There will be holes under some of the earth where water will converge to form underground rivers. In short, you send someone to investigate and give me the results of the investigation. Gort suppressed his curiosity and accepted the order. Chapter 592. The fish in the well did not cause too much of a sensation. If it was on Earth, the gimmick of fish coming out of an underground spring would definitely be a very good hype. But in this magical world, not to mention the underground fish spring, even if it rained fish from the sky, it would not be a big deal. The same was true for List. He was just a little curious about the formation of the fish spring and enjoyed the delicious fish in the well, but he did not pay too much attention to it. At present, in addition to World of Warcraft and potions, only special products such as rubber trees and hemp ropes could tempt him. The knight he sent to dive in the fish spring soon sent back an investigation report. The fish spring did have a channel, but the channel was very narrow. After diving in, he swam less than 10 meters before he encountered a narrow place and could no longer move forward. There were a lot of fish in the well in the waterway. It could be proved that the fish spring was indeed in the underground river, which was why the fish appeared. After reading the investigation report, List was not very satisfied. If the underground river is just a narrow channel, it is impossible to support so many fish in the well. There must be a huge underground cave or underground lake somewhere. Even the underground river is related to the magma channel. He remembered that there was a lake of bones in Red River Town, which was the former burial ground. Back then, there was a huge magma cavern beneath the dragon bones, and there were magma passageways that were blocked in all directions. Perhaps the underground river was developed in these severed magma passageways. Forget it, it doesn't make sense to ponder about it. If I have the chance in the future, I will slowly explore the underground river system of Black Horse Island. Although the fish spring did not involve any more interesting content, List still arranged for the fish spring, which gushed all year round, to be a subsidiary attraction of Thorn Castle. Dig a tunnel that goes down. Build a pavilion on the ground, named Fish Spring Promenade, which was a good place for leisure. List even wanted to build a barbecue booth in the Jade Spring Promenade. In the future, Thorn Castle could hold a barbecue buffet here, which was full of fun. All of this was done. List no longer paid attention to the construction of Thorn Castle. He went to the volcano of Dodo Island and practiced with the little fire dragon Leo for a night. With a lot of insights and experiences, he returned to the Flower Town, organized the contents, and wrote them into another masterpiece of his, List's Dragon Taming Manual. After that, He made some changes and finalized the speculations on the relationship between magic net nodes, elves, and dragons. He gave it to a Chi for reference. A Chi, who was studying druid magic, rarely threw herself into this theoretical magic book and read it with great interest. List chatted with Parker. At this time, Parker had mastered Serpentine and could communicate with people normally. He even learned a lot of wind language, which was taught by a Chi. In the territory, the one with the strongest learning ability was undoubtedly a Chi. She learned everything quickly. List, did you bring me jade powder? I want to change my taste. It's not satisfying to always eat white jade powder. Bring me some special jade powder. The purple jade powder I ate last time was not bad, Parker said casually while soaking in the pool. He was most concerned about the jade powder. There's no more purple jade. I brought cyan jade powder. List handed Parker a bag of ground cyan jade powder. Jade powder is not a gem, nor is it a crystal. It is a stone that is naturally produced in the veins and has magic power. This kind of magic is difficult to use to create magic equipment, but it is very suitable for the elves. Long-term consumption of jade powder can ensure the vitality of the elves. During the transplanting of cordyceps, they rely on jade powder to survive. However, there is no evidence that jade powder helps the evolution of the elves. It only maintains the vitality of the elves. Of course, it can also satisfy the elves' appetite. There are many kinds of jade: cyan jade, purple jade, white jade, topaz, emerald, chalcedony, agate, black jade, red jade, and so on. As long as it is a naturally produced stone with magic power, it is jade. The distribution of jade on the surface is sufficient, so the price is much cheaper than crystal. With the increase of elves, List consumes a lot of jade every day. He tried to find it on Black Horse Island, but he did not find a jade vein. He could only continue to buy it from outside. In fact, Black Horse Island is very poor in resources. In addition to the volcanic glass that was previously mined, there is no second mineral resource. The graphite, saltpeter, sulfur, jade, phosphate rock that he wanted are all gone. Even the raw materials needed to make glass, quartz, are not available. If it weren't for List having the smoke mission to transform the island. For any other lord, Black Horse Island can probably be used to raise horses and raise the group of black blood horses. Cyan jade powder tastes bad. Don't bring it next time. I don't like it. Parker licked the jade powder and said unhappily, List, I find that you don't care enough about me. You know that I like to eat hard jade powder, but you have to give me soft jade powder. It's good to have something to eat. Why are you so picky? Don't you feel guilty for treating the handsome Parker like this? Parker covered his small chest and pretended to act. List smiled and said, No. Parker shouted, Ah, rolling in the pool to vent his dissatisfaction. Don't shout. Look at Fitz, Tam, and Eddie next door. How happy they are eating. Please don't compare the handsome Parker with the ugly and idiotic three fools. This is an insult to me and to yourself. After all, we are both handsome. Parker said disdainfully. In its eyes, no one can be called handsome except List and itself. The three giant algae fairies were repeatedly ridiculed as ugly and jokingly called the three fools. The giant algae fairies were angry but dared not speak up because they couldn't beat them. Unlike the fairies who can't violate List's orders, the contract has relatively little binding on the big fairies. Parker often disobeyed List's orders behind his back and taught the three giant algae fairies who dared to bare their teeth at him. Fortunately, it understood the importance of the fairies in List's mind and didn't dare to really cripple the other fairies. At most, it would give them a superficial wound. Parker, let's make a deal. Don't say that we are both handsome. I think you are the most handsome. Parker suddenly laughed. Ha 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 ha, it doesn't matter. We are both handsome. He really thought that List was complimenting him. The corner of his mouth twitched. List didn't say anything more. No matter how smart the big fairies are, they are just big fairies. They are not like real humans who have a sound understanding ability. He walked into the study and looked at the Sirene Chi, who was seriously reading a book. Her petite and exquisite body, her white and rosy skin, her beautiful and innocent face, and her private parts entangled with water ribbons. Such a picture always made him have endless reverie. Sometimes Achi would wear clothes, but most of the time she didn't like to be bound by clothes. List, who had his own thoughts, didn't force her to wear clothes every day. His eyes wandered along Achi's undulating body and finally fixed on her ankles, which were connected to the shell and the seawater. Not having feet was Achi's current biggest flaw. Alas, why do I feel that all the fairies I meet are underage? He tidied up his sleeves and lamented. Achi was underage. Leo had just been born, the invisible dragon was probably underage, Emily was underage, and the twin sisters Lucy and Ruth were also underage. He shook his head to get rid of these messy thoughts. He was an upright person. Chapter 593. The upright List was patiently listening to the Siren Achi's reflections on his book, speculations on the correlation between magic net nodes, elves, and dragons. He had mentioned his conjectures about the magic net to Achi many times, so Achi was able to provide feedback as soon as he finished reading this theoretical work. Brother, Achi thinks that the magic net is not a net, but a field, although it is indeed like what you described, similar to a spider web producing nodes. Field? List was a little puzzled. He did tell Achi about electromagnetic fields because this world also had a compass. When he explained why a compass was a guide, he used the concept of the Earth's magnetic field. Then he explained electromagnetic fields, such as magnetism generating electricity, electromagnetic induction, and so on. He didn't expect Achi to not only remember the field, but also use the field in the concept of the magic net. She continued, Brother said that objects moving in a magnetic field can cut magnetic induction lines and generate electric currents. Yes, I did say that, List replied vaguely. In fact, he had graduated for too many years without touching a physics book. He was already vague about many physics concepts and didn't know whether his statement was correct or not. If he hadn't wanted to inspire Achi's understanding of the truth, he would have been too embarrassed to bring out half a bowl of water. If he remembered the concept wrong, he would have made a fool of himself. So Achi thinks that the magic net is a field that shrouds our world, that casting spells is using magic arrays to cut magnetic induction lines, and that magic is the electric current phenomenon generated by electromagnetic induction. This explanation felt very folksy. List couldn't help but ask, Achi, do you have any basis for making these inferences? Achi shook her head. I don't have enough evidence to prove this for the time being, but Achi has been reading a lot of magic books recently and listening to my brother talk about a lot of esoteric knowledge. I also studied a lot of natural magic. There are a lot of experiences brewing in my brain. Then, she said with some distress, the concept of the magic net being a field is my vague inference, but I can't prove whether the magic net is a net or a field. Brother, I have a lot of knowledge now, but I don't know how to deal with it. Many of their theories conflict with each other. List had a flash of inspiration. Achi, learn to write books with me. Ah? Writing books is what all mages do. Even the magic apprentices who only know how to cast fireballs know to publish books. You're already a great sorcerer, but apart from a few spellcasting books, you haven't written any magic books yet. Now, you should organize your brain and create a book. As a historian, magic theorist, aura-theorist, sociologist, musician, and playwright, List had rich experience in writing books. As a sociologist, he carefully studied the social system of this world and divided it into 5 classes: upper nobles and lords, middle and upper magicians, knight, officials, and artists, middle and middle technicians, mercenaries, middle and lower castle servants, craftsmen, merchants and workers, and lower serfs. As a historian, although his book Dragon's War in the Wild had been abandoned, after reading many night novels and magic books, he had sorted out a broad thread of civilization. Furthermore, they had made many historical inventions to fill in the missing important parts of this world's history. Once published, they would be destined to provide a lot of material for later generations of historians. As a musician, although his List's piano works collection only has a few pieces, such as To Alice, With You, The Swan of St. Saëns, and so on. His piano skills can't be considered proficient. But every time he played the piano, a large number of aristocratic ladies would take the initiative to throw themselves into his arms. As long as he continued to study, becoming the king of the piano was just around the corner. As a playwright, he had not yet published any plays, but under his guidance, a new type of drama was created. This kind of drama in the form of a stage play had begun to become popular outside the Coral Island. As a magic theorist, his theory of three-state magic array and reality interaction, triangle theory and unified demonstration of magic array structure, as well as the latest speculation on the correlation between weave nodes, sprites, and dragons would undoubtedly occupy a place in the history of magic development. As a chi theorist, he was even more amazing. The book Liszt's Earth Codex had become a treasure of the Tulip family. Although Liszt's Earth Codex had not been divulged, it was absolutely pioneering. It used a scientific method to summarize the essence of taking drugs, which was amazing. And he was still working on the even more amazing Liszt's Dragon Taming Handbook. Once completed, the world would change color. At this moment, Liszt, who had many titles attached to him, analyzed very seriously. Writing books is not a waste of time. Through writing books, one can better summarize the results of one's research, sort out the thoughts of the brain, and make the chaotic thoughts orderly, thereby obtaining more inspiration. After listening to his explanation, Achi couldn't help but nod seriously. Well, Big Brother is right. Achi has learned too much and stuffed it into her brain without sorting it out. It is time to organize them into a book. Very well, I look forward to your book. It just so happens that the white paper workshop in the territory is developing a new type of paper. When the time comes, I will use the new white paper to publish a book for you. Let more people know the name of Acheloid's truth. Hee hee. Thank you, Big Brother. Her research on nature magic had not been thorough, and Achi had to start writing a book. Her days were so busy that she didn't even have time to swim in the sea. Fortunately, she still had a mission, which was to go to the Dodo Island every few days to catch a large amount of fish for Charmander. This journey was the best time for her to relax, get close to the sea, and cleanse her soul. After returning, she had to continue researching magic, writing books, and organizing knowledge. Liszt was also very busy, but most of the time he was busy blindly. After leaving Achi's place, he went to the Mage Tower and brought his latest book to Crazy Truth for reference. At the same time, he attached the topic of, is the magic net a net or a field? He was already too lazy to study it. Whether it was a net or a field, he simply left it to Achi and Crazy to figure out. As a magic theorist, he only needed to put forward a theoretical conjecture, and the rest was left to the magic experimenters to prove. Crazy knew very little about the magic net. This theoretical work shocked her greatly, so she buried herself in it, unable to respond for a long time. Liszt didn't have time to waste here. He received a notice from Captain Costo that the sky ship Sunset, which had been repaired and transformed in the dock, was completely completed and was ready to be launched for an ocean trial. As a three-masted sailing ship, the Sunset would become the flagship of the Black Horse Island fleet for some time to come. Therefore, as a lord, Liszt naturally had to personally participate in this ocean trial. The sailing route had long been determined. It would set off directly from the new port, go to the port of Coral City to stop for supplies, and then circle around Coral Island before returning to Black Horse Port to dock. Chapter 594. The Sunset was moored in the dock and was about to go on a long voyage. Liszt rowed the Chocobo Loki and looked at the sky ship with a length of 65 meters, a width of 19 meters, and 3 huge and thick masts erected. With the collapse of the civilization of the Sun's Child, this huge ship that soared in the sky in an unimaginable way has completely become history. When Liszt salvaged it and decided to transform it into a sailing ship, it had already said goodbye to the past and moved on to a new future. Sir Lord, the current state of the Sunset, from what I know, is not inferior to the Palace fast-sailing ship. The speaker was Buck Driftwood, an apprentice shipbuilder. He came from a shipyard on Leather Island, the property of Marquis Ramirez White Glutinous Rice, who was forced to leave the shipyard for some reason. Then he was invited by the Tulip family through the caravan channel to settle in Black Horse Island and serve as the master of the shipyard. There were 3 families in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire that could build brigs: the white glutinous rice family, the pineapple family, and the sapphire family. There used to be the Marquis Bull family, which also mastered the shipbuilding technology of brigs, but now the Bull family has long since disappeared. Among them, the Sapphire family also mastered the method of building a 3-masted sailing ship, which was basically the world's top shipbuilding technology. It was strictly confidential and could not be leaked. It was impossible for ordinary nobles to poach people from the Sapphire family to build ships. Even if they did take away the shipbuilder, they would soon suffer the wrath of the Grand Duke. Therefore, Liszt could only ask his father Lee William to poach people from the white glutinous rice and pineapple families. He could not poach a shipbuilder, so he poached an apprentice shipbuilder. This apprentice shipbuilder named Buck Driftwood was quite skilled and was responsible for presiding over the technical development of brigs. It was believed that it would not take long for Liszt to master the technology of brigs. Coupled with the keel-fixing technology he got from Virginia Truth and the vertical sail technology he knew, he would definitely be able to build a high-quality sailing ship. With his rich experience in shipbuilding, Buck Driftwood also took over the heavy burden of transforming the Sunset from Captain Costo. After experimenting with new materials and new structures again and again, he finally completed all of the Sunset's modifications. I've studied palace speedboats before. Those mortise and tenon structures are very complicated. I can't find the answers to many of the mortise and tenon techniques for bearing and operating weight. But the rubber glue of the territory can replace those mortise and tenon structures. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire was short of iron. All the boats were made of wood, and there was no way to weld them, so they used mortise and tenon structures to build them. These mortise and tenon structures could not be understood with just a few observations. Barker wouldn't be able to understand even if he dismantled a royal ship and placed it in front of him. But the most important specialty of Black Horse Island, which plays an important role in shipbuilding technology, is rubber water. Materials bonded with rubber water were stronger than steel rivets. The solidified rubber water was resistant to fire, water, magic, and corrosion. In terms of the main keel, it still needs to be fixed by mortise and tenon structure, but the details can be replaced by rubber glue. Therefore, the Sunset's condition will not be any worse than the Palace speedboat. However, to develop 3-masted sailboat technology, I'm afraid it will take time to research. Barker was about 35 years old and started working in the shipyard at the age of 15. He may not have any talent, but with many years of experience, there was absolutely no problem with his vision. The Sunset has reached the standard of long-distance sailing. Then let's go. Waiting for the Sunset to replenish its nautical supplies, Liszt led a night squad and boarded the ship with Gort, Blair, Costo, and other officials. The wide deck felt wider than when he first rowed the Taro family speedboat. The sea breeze blew, and the sailors immediately, under the command of the first mate and second mate, weighed anchor, raised sails, and rowed. The Sunset cut through the waves of the sea and slowly sailed out of the dock, from green water to blue water. The ship was very smooth, and there were tables and cups on the deck. Liszt could sit under a parasol and taste the fragrant coconut juice. At the top of the mainmast, a black tulip temperament fluttered in the wind. My lord, the Sunset is really magnificent. Such a sailboat is definitely not inferior to the Grand Duke's Palace speedboat. Gort held a fragrant coconut and said happily, "It is indeed very mighty, but I always feel that something is missing." Liszt walked to the bow and said. Gort looked at the bow and suddenly realized, "I know, my lord, the Sunset's repair work is very perfect, but there is no bow image installed. If you want to receive the favor of the Knight's glory on the sea, you should install a sapphire dragon bow image at the bow." The sapphire dragon was the ruler of the Azure Sea, and its bow image was naturally popular. Bow image. Liszt narrowed his eyes. He was not willing to install a sapphire dragon bow image. If it was to be installed, it should be a fire dragon bow image. But compared to the bow image, he preferred another tool to be installed on the bow, the ram. Present. There was only one navy in the Azure Sea, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. It seemed meaningless to install a ram on a sailboat. There was no naval war. List. Loria has calculated that according to the current growth in sales, the glass business alone is enough to support the original tulip family. Originally, liquor was the most profitable industry in the territory, but now the glass business had far surpassed it. This was an exclusive business, and an exclusive business with no cost at all. Let Loria be more relaxed. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire is, after all, a remote archipelago country with a small population and few nobles. The vast continent is the place to do business. Once I fully explore the glass technology and expand the scale of production, gold coins will be just a bunch of numbers. Haha, that's right. In the future, gold coins will be just a bunch of numbers to us. Levis was very excited as he imagined the beautiful blueprint. Father has not returned from Blue Dragon Island. Grandmother doesn't like Madame Mary. Lavera has returned to Falcon Town, and Loria is not feeling well. Why don't we go directly to Gravel Castle? For what? An interesting party. Levis showed a lascivious smile. List calmly shook his head. Brother, how many times have I said that I don't like this kind of party? I will rest at Tulip Castle for the night and return by ship tomorrow morning. Chapter 595. Levis had his own social circle. The nobles of Broken Stone Castle and Beer Castle would basically be his future followers. List didn't want to get involved, not to mention that he really didn't like promiscuous parties. He preferred to walk onto the dance floor and dance to the piano music. When they saw each other, they would hold hands and talk about life ideals. Instead of simply eating and drinking, there would be no feelings, only desire, and no style at all. He first went to the small castle next to Coral City and chatted with his grandmother, mainly to observe Madame Penelope's potted plants for signs of breeding sprite worms, but he didn't find anything. In fact, he didn't tell Madame Penelope about the sprite worm bred by the stone flower. He understood that the smoke mission was the only reason why Madame Penelope's potted plants were so magical, so he didn't want Madame Penelope to continue to be obsessed with potted plants. The old lady should watch more stage plays, have tea parties, enjoy the afterglow of life, and take care of potted plants in her spare time. After resting in Tulip Castle for a night, they set off early the next morning. The voyage went smoothly, and they arrived at Black Horse Port before dark, completing the Sunset's first ocean voyage. After the accompanying apprentice shipwright, Buck Driftwood, inspected the Sunset system, he said, "My lord, the Sunset structure is up to standard, but there are still some areas that are worth improving. After a week of reinforcement and modifications, it can basically be finalized." Very good. List expressed his satisfaction and immediately chose the captain. The experienced Costo was the best choice. The crew was also the first batch of sailors in Flower Town. They had fought the wind and waves many times on the sea and knew how to handle bad weather. However, the Sunset probably wouldn't encounter bad weather. In order to match his flagship, List gave the largest black pearl in his collection, the black pearl the size of a bathtub, to Chris, Elksun, and 2 other mages to make it into the most powerful wind pearl. In addition, a water-calming divine pearl made of pink pearls was also provided to the Sunset. The divine tempering beads made of gold pearls were also installed in List's exclusive cabin. The Sunset's hull was wide and sturdy, so it had a relatively large tower building. It was a 2-story building made of wood. This tower building was List's exclusive cabin. When he was on the ship, the tower would be equipped with male and female servants, so that he could still enjoy a full range of servant service while he was sailing. The only pity was that the divine warming pearl couldn't lower the temperature below 0. Otherwise, it could be used as a refrigerator to refrigerate a bunch of delicious food instead of putting it into the gem space. The gem space was not big. It was a spherical shape with a diameter of about 5 meters, about 65 cubic meters, the size of a single apartment. He had 4 space gems, but the total volume was no more than 260 cubic meters. Based on the 2 6-meter height of a residential building on Earth, it was only a suite of 100 square meters. World of Warcraft meat alone took up most of the space, and there wasn't much room to carry all sorts of delicacies. Of course, he was too greedy. Even a duke like the Sapphire Grand Duke, who ruled a country, probably did not have a space ring, and he had to go out on a simple voyage. He had 4 space gems. If he sold one at will, it would be absolutely easy to get the title of Earl. Those kings and dukes would never be stingy for a space ring. However, the space gem was related to the secret of the invisible dragon, and List was reluctant to expose it. In the next few days, the Sunset was moored at Black Horse Port for painting, renovation, and interior decoration. List returned to Flower Town and started his ordinary daily life. The only thing that was not ordinary was that 2 tulip worms were born one after another. One was golden and the other was bright red, both bright, crystal like jade, extremely beautiful. After the contract, the number of sprite worms he had reached 47 to 5 of which were contractors with a chi. My family is getting fatter and fatter. Now it's up to you. Come on, little guy. Looking at the earlier tulip worm whose skin had begun to turn gray and its body was rapidly expanding. List was looking forward to it. The tulip worm, which was under great pressure, finally launched an attack on its destiny and entered the fat pupa stage, which determined life and death. Wow! Ella ran over. List suddenly reached out and grabbed Ella, who was about to approach the fat pupa tulip worm, and said, "Ella, you listen to me. From now on, you are strictly prohibited from approaching this box, and you are not allowed to touch the sprite worm. Do you hear me?" Ella twisted her body and screamed. However, List scolded her in his heart. She soon became honest, pouted her mouth, and reluctantly nodded in agreement. Go play." List was a little distressed, but he still hardened his heart and showed indifference. In order to stimulate Ella, he made it work hard. Ella flew back to her box, sulking. In another box not far away, Mickey was still amusing himself by counting the corn kernels. List encouraged the tulip worm in the fat pupa stage. He left the castle, went to the apple tree, and lay down in a rocking chair to relax. Seeing Butler Carter coming over, he suddenly asked, "Mr. Carter, do you think this apple orchard should be transplanted to Thorn's Castle? I will definitely live in Thorn's Castle in the future. Without an apple orchard, I always feel that something is missing." Butler Carter put a cup of green tea on the apple table and said with a smile, "Master, you can now plant apple trees in Thorn's Castle. When the castle's main body is built next year, the apple trees should be able to germinate and grow branches. In a few years, there will be a new apple orchard. Unfortunately, there is no second apple sprite. An apple orchard without apple sprite wormstalk is not perfect. Perhaps we can buy apple sprites from the outer islands." Butler Carter suggested. In the past, he would never have had such an idea. However, with the increasing income of the territory, his boldness began to grow. Buying a sprite worm was a piece of cake. List nodded at once. Well, have the caravan pay more attention. If there is an apple sprite worm for sale, buy it immediately. He decided to build an apple orchard in Thorn's Castle, in case one day an apple fell on his head. With a burst of inspiration, he might discover the world's gravitational force. While the days were leisurely, Count Lee William finally returned from Blue Dragon Island. On the day of his return, he summoned his followers to Tulip Castle for a meeting. He laid out the contents of this year's expansion order. The Grand Duke has contacted the Steel Ridge Kingdom. This year's expansion order war will begin in August. We will set off on July 20th and assemble at Oxhoof City. The expansion order war had been going on for hundreds of years. Whether it was earlier or later, or even if it was cancelled, it was nothing new. Therefore, no one raised any objections and directly jumped to the next step, the scale of the orders of chivalry, as well as the distribution of the candidates. List sat in his chair, looking relaxed. He wasn't interested in discussing. Chapter 596. The final result of the meeting was that Coral Island would do its best to participate in this expansion order, and the scale would be larger than the Battle of Ironhoof Island and the annihilation of Marquis Bull. Because many Earth Knights had been incorporated into the expansion order last year, nearly 1,100 Earth Knights could be sent to participate in the war this time. Among them, List would lead 60 Earth Knights and serve as the head of the Black Orders of Chivalry. However, his main task was still the sword battle, and the command of the Orders of Chivalry was directly handed over to Marcus. Before Emily grew up, Marcus was always his chief knight. The well-trained Blizzard Beast squad was about to appear in full. It was time to let the nobles of the Eagle Kingdom experience the horror of a big dog tearing down a house. The meeting was over. The nobles returned to their territories to prepare for the Orders of Chivalry. The departure was set on July 20th, and there was not much time left before the departure. Fortunately, he had prepared beforehand, so List was not too busy and still lived a routine life. He went to the volcano of Dodo Island twice and squeezed the little fire dragon Leo to improve his strength. Then he paid Leo to a Chi to deliver food every few days, so that the little fire dragon would not starve to death when the war came back. Brother, rest assured, a Chi will take good care of Leo. Pike, take care of them too. A Chi suddenly thought of something. Brother, are you going to take Rose with you? Rose can protect the fleet in the sea. Rose, forget it, let her accompany you. List did not intend to take the colorful whale Rose with him. Except for the 20 days of round trip, he was not at sea for the rest of the time. The battle still took place on land, and Rose could not help much. By the way, Achi, have you started writing a book? Achi is sorting out the books to be written. There are too many ideas, and I have to write a lot of magic books. When brother returns from the war, Achi can almost write a part of it. Then when I come back, I will enjoy Achi's work. In the blink of an eye, it was almost the day of departure. The affairs of the territory had all been arranged, no matter how big or small, and the officials had Gort to coordinate the overall situation. Although they might not be very aggressive, at least they could ensure that everything went on as usual. The knights would be controlled by Paris, who would do her best to ensure the safety of the territory. At the same time, Achi would also be on guard in secret. Paris's fighting power in the form of a black dragon gang could not be underestimated, and Achi was a water magician. Her fighting power in the water was very strong. If pirates were to attack Black Horse Island, Achi would be able to solve it alone. Standing in the middle of the sea, Achi cast several high-level spells in turn. Without the Sky Knight to block them, there was no way to stop her. The rats sent in the dark would also have nowhere to hide under Paris's search. It was extremely easy for Paris, who was invisible, to investigate a person. Coupled with the great magic caster of the Magus Tower, Crazy Truth, there was no need for List to worry about the safety of the territory. The only thing that made him uneasy was the tulip worm. The tulip worm was motivated by pressure. After entering the fat pupa stage, even if List encouraged it every day, its magic still withered day by day. When he was about to set off, the fat gray tulip bug's magic power was already faintly discernible. It's dangerous. It won't fail, right? List was nervous. He could no longer feel the emotions of the tulip worm, and the desire to survive had almost disappeared. No matter how he tried to contact it, there was no way to activate the response of the tulip worm. Why is this happening? It is clear that the smoke mission has stirred the threads of fate, but the tulip worm still continues to wither? His face became more and more serious. The fat pupa stage of the tulip worm in the castle was obviously continuing to wither. In the tulip field of the flower farm, the tulip worm stalk also began to curl and turn yellow. Its leaves gradually withered, and the flowers on top of its head became dispirited. Even if List constantly tried to add fertilizer, sprinkle jade powder, and even grind many magic potions of chaos magic power to replenish the worm stalk's magic power, it was still impossible to reverse its decline. In the end, under List's helpless gaze, the night before departure, the fat pupa stage of the tulip worm's magic power had completely dissipated. With a light touch, its fat body immediately turned into ashes, disappearing into the air. The tulip field's tulip wormstalk also dissipated with the wind. Since his transmigration, this was the first time his sprite had died. The evolution had failed, and it was as if it had been completely erased. Apart from his memories, there was no trace of the tulip worm left behind. "Master." Standing behind List, Carter softly called out, wanting to comfort List. For non-contractors, the death of a sprite worm did not affect them too much. They had not experienced the wonderful feeling of telepathy, and naturally did not have deep feelings. For many people, the failure of sprite evolution was a very normal phenomenon. There was only a 1 in 10 chance of a sprite worm evolving into a lesser sprite. Most sprite worms could not survive this evolution. Like Ella and Mickey in the castle, there was no other way to explain their successive evolutions except for the knight's glory. Even many lesser aristocrats would suppress the evolution of sprite worms. They would rather the sprite worm live for 10 years and die of old age than die prematurely because of evolution. "I'm fine, Mr. Carter. I just feel a little uncomfortable." Chapter 597. This chapter is a reward for the leader Dusk's battle song. 1 chapter for now and 11 chapters in the future. Come to think of it, Warsong had gotten 3 accounts and all of them had become leaders. The mission failed. The smoke mission, which had been going smoothly, failed for the first time. As early as when he first discovered the smoke mission, List had thought about what would happen if the mission failed. However, he was afraid of leading to an unpredictable outcome. He had been working hard to complete the mission or change the mission. Coupled with the generous rewards of those missions, he was really reluctant to let it fail. Even this time, the tulip worm evolution, List did not want to fail. However, he still failed. He stared at the smoke serpentines that had begun to change without blinking, waiting for the latest change. Slowly, the twisted smoke began to form new serpentines. Mission. When good luck is used up, bad luck will replace it. If you often walk by the river, how can you not wet your shoes? But you have to learn to grow in adversity. Like a seagull facing a storm, please defeat the bat in the dark. Reward Bloody Mary. Huh? There is still a mission? When good luck is used up, bad luck will replace it. List felt surprised. He had considered that the smoke mission would be far away from him or cause serious injuries. He did not expect that just a few words expressing good luck would become bad luck, and then asking him to defeat the bat in the dark. After the mission was completed, there was still a reward. There was basically no change. He was somewhat disappointed and inexplicably relieved. He was very satisfied with the form of the smoke mission and did not want any changes. Immediately, his attention was focused on the mission. What is the bat in the dark? And what is Bloody Mary? I seem to have heard of Bloody Mary. It seems to be a cocktail? I remember that in many movies there is a cocktail called Bloody Mary. Are you giving me a new cocktail recipe? Bloody Mary had been interpreted as a cocktail. As for the bat in the dark, List did not quite understand. He thought it was some kind of bat-type World of Warcraft, or was it referring to vampires? In the night novels, there were stories involving vampires, special humans who could turn into bats. Ghosts, liches, and sirens had all been proven to exist. He believed that vampires definitely existed. In Curtis Truth's notes, vampires were also mentioned alongside sorcerers. He seemed to be a special kind of spellcaster like the druids. So, some vampire is carrying the Bloody Mary cocktail recipe with him and wants me to kill him and drop the recipe? List was not nervous. He was no longer an ignorant person. As a half-step dragon knight, as long as it wasn't a dragon knight, he was not afraid of any challenge. When will the bat in the dark night come? He waited for the latter half of the night, but there were no bats in the night. He patrolled around with his magic eye and even rode the chocobo Loki around, but still did not find any suspicious night bats. He didn't sleep well that night, but at dawn the next day, he led the Orders of Chivalry to Tulip Castle, but there were still no bats in the dark night. He no longer waited, Perhaps the bats in the dark night would attack him on the way. As for attacking the territory, List could only hope that Paris, Chris, and Achi could stop them. He had already told his butler, Carter, that if the territory encountered any danger, he should immediately escort the elves to the castle by the sea and continue to blow the horn he had specially placed. When the time came, Achi would hear the sound of the horn and protect these elves. He believed that the elves hiding in the water could survive safely. Protecting the elves was equivalent to protecting most of the territory. The fleet set off at the port of Coral City. List did not follow the Count on the Tulip family's largest three-masted sailboat, the Tulip. He stayed on his Sunset, enjoying the comfort of the constant temperature air conditioning. When he arrived at Oxfoot City, there was still no movement from the smoke mission, and the bats in the dark night did not show their whereabouts. I talked to Achi. If there are vampires attacking the territory, she will quickly come to inform me while protecting the elves. With Achi's speed and strength, there should be no danger in the sea. If there is a situation, she should come and tell me. There should be no problem. Black Horse Island was a 4-day voyage from Oxfoot City. With Achi's speed, she could arrive in half a day. Even from Black Horse Island to the mainland, it would not take more than a day. Therefore, if Achi did not appear, he was not worried about the territory. The port of Iron Hoof City was very lively, and almost all the nobles of the Grand Duchy participated in the development order. The fleet of the great nobles was so dense that the entire port was packed. The Count was going to attend a meeting. List did not know many nobles, so he just wandered around Oxfoot City. Shortly afterward, he heard that there was a trade of sprite worms in the trading market of Oxfoot City. It was rare for the nobles in the country to gather together, so he naturally could not waste this opportunity. List, who was feeling bored, would not miss it either. He put on a mask and pinned a special dried tulip flower to his chest to resist the stench of Oxfoot City, and led his servants into the market. "Viscount List, it really is you." List was strolling in the market when someone suddenly greeted him. He turned around and saw that it was the son of Jonas Moongrass, Count of Moonlight City, Jobs Moongrass. "Sir Jobs, are you also shopping in the market?" "Yes. I'm going to see if there are any sprite worms to trade." Jobs was a gregarious man, and he immediately introduced List to several of the young men with him, the scions of the Blue Blood Alliance. Unlike the feudal nobles, the noble children of the Blue Blood Alliance would basically go to the battlefield when they reached adulthood. Although the death rate was relatively high, the speed of promotion was much faster than that of the feudal nobles. Basically, their resources were either rewarded by the Grand Duke or plundered from the battlefield. The proportion of income from the feudal business was very small. The Blue Blood Alliance and the feudal nobles were not a social circle, and the young nobles rarely communicated with each other. However, List, as the youngest Sky Knight in the country, was first-rate in intimidating people. The young aristocrats who were with Jobs bowed politely. List also politely returned the greeting without appearing arrogant or enthusiastic. After exchanging a few words, they went their separate ways and did not communicate further. List continued to look for sprite worms in the market, but there were too few worthy sprite worms. It was rare to see a barley worm that had not yet been contracted. The seller asked for 4,500 gold coins and refused to budge. 4,500 gold coins to buy a barley worm was very foolish. Even a sprite worm that could be used to grow potions was not necessarily worth this price. List did not insist. He did not have a barley-type potion, and buying it would be a serious loss. Moreover, the death of the tulip worm also alerted him that getting the smoke mission did not mean that his sprite worm had no chance of evolution failure. He even decided to give up the plan to stimulate Ella. The evolution of a sprite into a greater sprite also had a high probability of failure. Although it would not die like the tulip worm, it would certainly suffer a great loss of vitality and shorten its lifespan. So he wanted to let nature take its course. He no longer thought of interfering with the evolution of the sprites. He just tried to provide them with pheromones as much as possible to help them increase the probability of successful evolution on their own. In the evening, he followed the Count to attend the banquet held by the eldest prince. Chapter 598. The Port of the Iron Shoe City. It was still noisy and lively in the middle of the night. The knights who were bored during the voyage were still making noise in the port, gambling, drinking, or getting off the ship to have fun in the city. List, on the other hand, was sleeping soundly in the tower. According to the usual practice, no matter how drunk he was, he would take a bath first before returning to his room to sleep. Today, for some reason, he was so drunk that he directly fell asleep. Outside the cabin, servants were on duty. There was also a team of knights patrolling back and forth, always on guard against the situation outside. Of course, more knights were drinking and playing finger-guessing games in the lower cabin. But they did not dare to make too much noise for fear of disturbing List's sleep. A sailor who woke up at night groped his way to the toilet in a daze. The urinal facing the sea was filled with water. One could imagine how filthy the port of the Iron Shoe City would be the next day. Almost all the ship's toilets discharged directly into the sea. It sounded disgusting, but the sea had the ability to purify. After all, those fish and shrimp also needed to defecate and pee, and the excrement and urine would still be discharged directly into the sea. Because of this pollution, List deliberately anchored the Sunset outside the port to prevent it from being suffocated to death by the accumulated stench inside. After the sailor finished peeing, his whole body relaxed, and he shuddered. He put on his pants and walked back. Suddenly, he felt a bird fly past him and jumped in fright. Damn! What kind of stupid bird is it? So late at night. After cursing, he returned to the cabin and continued to sleep. But what he did not see it was not a bird, but a pitch-black bat with blood-red eyes. The bat flew around the Sunset, finally determined the direction, and quietly landed on the glass window of the small tower. Hanging upside down, its head just passed a bit of the glass and could see into the room. This was not a special bat, only the size of a palm, but its blood-red eyes were particularly spirited. Then he looked around the interior of the house. There were 3 servants in the room, 1 male and 2 female. The 2 female servants seemed to be reporting something to the male servant. Then the male servant nodded, indicating for the 2 to continue. He himself took out an iron from the cupboard, filled it with charcoal, and waited for the iron to heat up before ironing the clothes. The bat watched for a while, then dropped to the ground. It flapped its wings and moved to another window. After changing rooms a few times, it finally chose a room and crawled in through the gap between the door and the floor. The room was very dark. There was no light, but it was chilly. The temperature was much lower than outside. This caused the bat to stare blankly, as if it did not understand why the room was so cool. But it didn't care too much about it. Instead, it flew up and flew towards the bed. He circled around the bed twice, as if trying to determine if the person sleeping on the bed was really asleep. Seeing that the sleeping person was covered in the smell of alcohol and breathing evenly, it flew away from the bed in satisfaction. In the next moment, the bat on the edge of the bed suddenly emitted a scarlet light. As the light flickered, it had already transformed into a woman with a voluptuous figure. She was not tall, and she was dressed in a tight black leather shirt and pants. His pale face and pitch-black hair could be vaguely seen in the dark room. His blood-red eyes were very clear, as if they were glowing. The bat turned into a woman. She stood on the edge of the bed and took out a small syringe-like tool from her bulging chest. Then she bent down, as if she was going to use the syringe to collect some blood from the person sleeping on the bed. But just as she was about to do it, the person who was sleeping suddenly stretched out his hand and directly strangled the female bat's neck. Then, there was a burst of light. It was unknown when, but a crystal lamp was placed on the head of the bed. The light quickly illuminated the room and the owner of the arm that was strangling the female bat's neck. It was List who fell asleep after returning from a drunken stupor. His starry vortex-like pupils were full of indifference and mockery, and a faint mocking smile hung on his handsome face. The bat in the dark. I thought it was some terrifying existence, but it turns out it's just a sneaky vampire. Tell me, who are you? From his tone, it seemed that he knew about the female bat's invasion. And it was true. He had been thinking about the Dark Knight bat for the past few days, so he did not relax his vigilance at all. There was no warning from the territory, and it was unlikely to encounter bats during the voyage. After thinking about it, Oxford City was the best place to encounter the dark night bat. That was why he tried to attract the dark night bat by pretending to be drunk. The alcohol went to his head, and he could easily get rid of it by running the dragon's chi. Originally, he just wanted to give it a try and did not have much hope. Unexpectedly, in the dark room, when he cast magic eyes, he saw a blood-red bat circling around the tower. So, he pretended to be asleep. Lying on the bed, his body was tense, and he was already ready to fight. When the bat flew on the bed, he intended to catch it, but in the end, he did not act rashly and waited for a moment. Then he saw a magical scene. The bat turned into a living woman. Sure enough, it was the legendary vampire who could switch between human and bat at will. Under the light, the appearance of the female vampire was clearly revealed. She had wavy black hair, blood-red pupils, and a pale but beautiful face. The coquettish red lips were slightly opened because List was holding her neck. She had white teeth, but there were no fangs that the legendary vampires should have. Under the tight leather clothes and trousers was a curvy body, full breasts, plump buttocks, and quite sexy. "Why don't you answer my question?" List was not intimidated by the vampire. He pinched her neck and showed no mercy. But the female vampire suddenly stuck out her tongue, licked her lips, and forced a smile. Then her body exploded with a bang. The blood-red light flickered, and she turned into hundreds of small bats, frantically fleeing in all directions. In an instant, the whole room was filled with bats. The flying bats interfered with the line of sight, and some even took the initiative to attack List. Want to escape? List's chi surged, and his body rushed forward like a sharp arrow. He caught a bat that was about to get out of the door. Among all the bats, the light on this one was the brightest. After catching it, he turned around and punched. The surging chi turned into flames, burning the bats in the room. One by one, they exploded into blood-red light. In the blink of an eye, there were only 2 or 3 bats left in the room. They were still flying randomly, but they did not dare to approach List. As for the bat in his hand, it hissed and screeched, struggling to escape from his grasp. But although List did not tighten his grip, he released a rich high-level fire attribute dragon chi, easily defeating the blood-red magic released by the bat. "Stop struggling. Do you think you can escape from my hands?" As the number 1 person under the Dragon Knight, List felt that his strength was unfathomable. How could a sneaky vampire escape from his hands? No matter which night novel, vampires did not seem to be very strong, except for their strange movements. From the few encounters just now, he had already estimated the strength of the female vampire. Her physical quality was very weak. Obviously, she was not a knight, but a spellcaster similar to a magician. Chapter 599. Although the movement in the room was short, it still alarmed the squire who was guarding outside, and he quickly came to inquire. "My lord, there's nothing wrong. Go back to your post." List did not intend to alarm the others. He wanted to figure out the identity of the vampire first. After the squire retreated, he looked at the bat that had stopped struggling and gently let go of his hand. The bat that fell to the ground suddenly burst into a blood-red light and turned back into the female vampire in a tight leather suit. She did not run away again. Her pale face looked calm, but there was disbelief and fear in her eyes. But soon her eyes returned to normal, and she used a smile to cover up her emotions. "As expected of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, the youngest Sky Knight, you are very strong." She spoke in Serpentine, but it was very poor, and there were grammatical and order errors. Obviously, she was not a person of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, a vampire. "Of course I am very strong, but let's talk about you. What is your identity?" List smiled slightly. Despite the assassination, he still showed a very gentlemanly demeanor. "Speaking of which, I have always believed in the existence of vampires, but this is the first time I have seen one with my own eyes. I was just passing by. Do you believe me, Lord Viscount? Of course not. From before you entered the door to after you entered the door, all your movements were in my field of vision. So why not be more straightforward and tell me your identity and intentions in detail? I will consider whether to kill you or let you go. But it's true that I was passing by, smelled good blood, and came here to find Lord Viscount. Before the voice died away, List reached forward and grabbed the female vampire's neck again. His face was calm, but the strength of his hand was getting stronger and stronger. I am usually a very patient person, but I didn't take a bath tonight. I feel uncomfortable all over, so my patience is not very good. If you don't say it, I will lose my patience and crush you directly. The female vampire wanted to speak, but because her neck was being strangled, she could not speak. List did not seem to have any intention of letting go. He continued, I am indeed very interested in your origin, but sometimes I can't control myself. I like to kill people indiscriminately. If you want to run, go ahead. If you can get out of this house, consider it my loss. After finishing his speech, he finally let go of her. Cough, cough. The female vampire coughed hard for a moment, her full chest trembling. It was indeed fascinating. Lord Viscount, you are so cruel. Even women are cruel to you. List said lightly, keep talking nonsense. You're testing my patience. There was nothing the female vampire could do. She was struggling and hesitating, and she did not speak again. List did not urge her. He just looked at her, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He summoned the smoke mission, wanting to see if there were any hints for the smoke mission. However, there was something strange. There was no change in the smoke mission, indicating that the mission was not yet completed. Didn't I defeat the bat in the dark? List looked at the female vampire behind the smoke and frowned slightly. He was a little confused about the smoke mission. Could it be that he had to kill this female vampire to complete the mission? Such a frown and the murderous intent in his eyes. The female vampire, who was already struggling, made a decision in an instant. Lord Viscount, my name is Elizabeth Black Knight. I am a Black Knight vampire from the Eagle Kingdom. I am from... You can speak wind language. I can understand it. Well, my name is Elizabeth Black Knight. I am a mixed-race vampire from the Black Knight family. As for the Black Knight family, I am the vampire servant of His Highness Alonso Cyclamen. Elizabeth Black Knight. After she began to speak wind language, she no longer stuttered and could express her meaning clearly. Alonso Cyclamen? List had heard of this name. The title page of Marquis Bull's book about dragons had His Highness Alonso Cyclamen. So he asked, who is Alonso? He is a Marquis of the Eagle Kingdom. His surname is Cyclamen, but he is also one of the Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom. I don't know much about him. I haven't even met him. I am just a mixed-race vampire. My position in the Black Knight family is very low. Tell me about the Black Knight family, vampires, and your intentions for coming here. Of course I can tell you, Lord Viscount, but I have a condition. Sorry, I don't like to negotiate with captives. Don't. Lord Viscount, listen to me. I am a mixed-race vampire. My heart is held by a pure-blood vampire. The heart is the biggest weakness of vampires. Without my heart, I am no different from being dead. If you help me get my heart, I will completely surrender to you. As she spoke, Elizabeth gently stuck out her tongue and licked her red lips. When the time comes, I will listen to whatever you want to do. The female vampire under the light was very tempting. Although List's soul was no longer that of a young man full of vigor and vitality, his body was still that of a young man. He could not help but feel hot. Fortunately, he immediately activated the dragon's fighting energy and suppressed the heat. His expression did not change. I don't care for vampires who only dare to sneak in the dark. However, I am very interested in pure-blood and mixed-race vampires. By the way, how do you differentiate them? From what you said, it seems that you are not the only vampire in the vicinity. Pure-blood vampires are vampires whose blood has been highly refined and completely integrated with blood magic. Blood magic is a special branch of dark magic. It can be passed down from generation to generation in the family, but the fertility is very low. Mixed-race vampires are vampires whose blood has not been integrated with blood magic. We are all vampires who have been converted from humans. So, you were holding a needle just now, and it seems that you wanted to turn me into a vampire? It was an order from Tubert Black Knight. He wants to turn you into a mixed-race vampire and make you his subordinate. Elizabeth continued, Lord Viscount, you are very powerful. As long as you kill him, I will definitely pledge my loyalty to you and tell you all your secrets. Why should I believe you? In fact, I have enough methods to make you surrender, beg for mercy, and tell me all your secrets. Now, I will give you 2 choices. 1, refuse to cooperate and I will kill you. 2, cooperate and if you perform well, I may help you kill Tubert Black Knight. He could see a flash of hatred in Elizabeth's eyes when she spoke of Tubert. Of course, he could not rule out the possibility that she was deliberately putting on an act. After thinking for a moment, Chapter 600. It had been a year and a half since the dragon-slaying incident. During this period, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire had issued a development order and was preparing to issue a second one. Everything seemed unaffected. But unexpectedly, Liszt was once again involved in the aftermath of the dragon-slaying incident. An active dragon knight of the Eagle Kingdom, Marquis Alonso Celeste, sent his vampire servant to Iron Hoof Island to search for the missing great magician of Goat Gathering to find out the truth of the dragon-slaying incident. It seemed that he was the shadow behind Marquis Bull in the dragon-slaying incident. Unfortunately, Elizabeth Black Knight was only a mixed-blood vampire. She was transformed from a human by the pure-blood vampire, Tubert Black Knight. According to her own words, she was only at the level of an ordinary magician during the day. The sunlight would strongly interfere with blood magic. At night, the power of blood magic was greatly increased. Her strength could reach the level of an archmage. Moreover, she could transform into a bat and sneak into many places to complete her mission quietly. Tubert is a core member of the Black Knight family. His wife is a native pureblood vampire. He is a foreign pureblood vampire who was transformed from a human and gradually upgraded to a pureblood. At night, his strength is roughly equivalent to that of a Sky Knight who has reached the level of perfection. Elizabeth explained in detail. Vampires could be said to be a spellcaster profession. They could also be said to be a completely new species. Most vampires were mixed bloods. They were humans who were transformed through a ritual to supplement the number of vampires. The inner circle of true vampires was very small. They were all made up of purebloods. Most of them were native purebloods born between vampires. A small number of them were foreign purebloods who were transformed from humans and upgraded. The birth rate of purebloods was low, but their strength was tyrannical. I don't know about the core members of the Black Knight family. I only take orders from Tubert. He holds my heart. This time, Tubert brought 5 mixed-bloods to Iron Hoof Island. I am one of them. As long as you kill Tubert and get his heart, you can order the 5 of us mixed-bloods. He had heard many secrets. Liszt remained expressionless as he calmly asked, Since Tubert is a perfect Sky Knight, why do you think I can kill him? I'm just a normal Sky Knight who just advanced. This was the truth. Although he had become a Dragon Knight and his Do-Chi had gradually changed into Dragon Do-Chi, it was still an ordinary high-level Fire Do-Chi. It was not perfect. The exact classification of a Sky Knight should be the same as that of an Earth Knight, which was divided into ordinary and elite. However, because the gap was too big, there was an extra level of Sword Saint. A Sword Saint who was known as a Sword Saint was more of an honorary title. If a high-level warrior's energy was not perfected, then he would be an ordinary Sky Knight. If he had perfected high-level warrior's energy, then he would be a perfected Sky Knight. There was no such thing as a high-level Do-Chi that belonged to the Sword Saint level. Sword Saint was a title that relied on one's own strength, and it was between ordinary and perfect. That was why Liszt could call himself an ordinary Sky Knight if he had not perfected his advanced Chi. Elizabeth licked her lips. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but there was always some temptation. If I hadn't experienced it myself, I wouldn't believe that Lord Viscount is so powerful. But I can't even release blood magic in the hands of Lord Viscount. I feel that the Do Chi in your body has a terrifying restraining effect on blood magic. Her blood-red eyes were very bright. I once fought with a sword saint. Although I couldn't beat him, he couldn't catch me at all. Even Tubert couldn't catch me easily. But Lord Viscount, you can catch me effortlessly. Your strength is far greater than what I heard. I am willing to take a gamble. As she spoke, she revealed a trembling expression again. The Black Knight family is very terrifying. I used to be just an ordinary magic apprentice. It was Tubert who found that my blood was suitable for blood magic and forcibly turned me into a vampire. I hate vampires. I hate the Black Knight family, and I hate Tubert even more. Her expression was vivid, as if there really was an unforgettable fear and hatred. But Liszt could be sure that Elizabeth was indeed acting, and her expression was a little overboard. So her words could only be taken for a moment and not taken seriously. However, defeating Tubert Black Knight was probably a mission that had to be done. After all, he had already caught Elizabeth, but the smoke mission was still not completed, which meant that the bat in the Dark Knight was not only Elizabeth, but also Tubert and the other 4 mixed bloods. According to the information provided by Elizabeth, Tubert's strength was probably equivalent to that of a perfect Sky Knight, which was not enough in front of Liszt. Even if the other 4 mixed bloods and Elizabeth were added, he wouldn't have any trouble dealing with them. But vampires were, after all, strange. Perhaps Elizabeth was sent by them as bait to lure Liszt into a trap. He was not yet an invincible dragon knight, at most a half-step dragon knight. Not only had he not ridden a dragon, but he was also not yet an adult. Even his strength was inferior to that of Marquis Bull. He still had to be careful. Elizabeth, how can I trust you? Viscount, what else do I need to do to make you trust me? I'm even willing to do anything for you. Try not to act in front of me. You may not believe it, but I often instruct the actors in the theater in my territory on how to act. Tubert can control you with his heart, but I can't. How can I trust that you're not lying to me, or that you won't betray me when I kill Tubert? Elizabeth's eyes lit up. Viscount, have you decided to kill Tubert? Liszt smiled, as if he was talking about something trivial. If you can make me trust you, I don't mind killing a few bats. He took a deep breath, and his plump chest swelled up a little more. Elizabeth extended her right hand and gently scratched her left wrist with the nail of her index finger. Immediately, a wound appeared, and blood began to flow. Of course, she was not cutting her wrist to commit suicide, but using blood magic to extract her own blood, which was the size of a fist, sticky and glowing. Her pale face was even paler, and the blue veins under her skin could almost be seen. She held the blood and handed it to Liszt. Viscount, this is the blood that I've fused with blood magic for many years. Although I won't die without it, I'll lose almost all my magic and the potential to advance to a pure blood. I hope this will make you trust me. In the vision of the magic eyes, the blood was wrapped in rich red magic power, and the magic light on Elizabeth's body was dim and almost extinguished. After a few seconds of hesitation, he reached out and took the blood. Chapter 601. This chapter is titled, Forget About Giving a Name. Thank you very much. Tubert is very cautious. He never reveals his whereabouts. But my mission tonight is to extract your blood. As long as I contact him, he'll definitely appear. Pure blood vampires have almost no weaknesses other than their fear of light. His bat transformation was at a high level, unlike my bat transformation where only one was my real body. Every bat of his was his real body. If you can't kill these bats quickly, he'll be able to escape. However, I have indeed made preparations. After killing him and absorbing his heart and blood, I will be able to become a pure blood. This is a bloody net, a magical equipment that I asked a great mage to weave for me. Can trap bats. As long as you're fast enough, Lord Viscount, Tubert won't be able to escape," Elizabeth said. She searched the chest area of her leather jacket for a while and took out a folded red net, handing it to List. Speaking of hand speed, List's was definitely not slow. However, he was curious. "You hid everything on you? Why can't I tell?" Elizabeth slowly stroked her chest and smiled. "Please don't doubt my generosity, Lord Viscount." His mouth twitching, List ignored the female vampire's teasing. "Where did you hide your clothes and these things when you transformed into a bat?" The strength of blood magic is that it can transform special items with blood magic, but it can only accommodate a small number of items. I spent a long time refining this net of bloody light with blood magic before it became my personal possession. Interesting. What other items do you have? He's a mixed blood vampire. How could he have so many personal items? I only have the crimson net, which I secretly refined to deal with other vampires. The other blood extraction needle was given to me by Tubert. Why, Elizabeth said in a resentful tone. List did not force her. He simply said, "If that's the case, you can leave first. I'll change my clothes and go with you to kill Tubert. Go early and come back early. I still have to shower when I come back. It's uncomfortable." He chased Elizabeth out of the door. Firstly, he did need to change his clothes. Secondly, he wanted to see if the other party would try to escape. Trust was impossible. Before confirming that his blood could restrain his opponent, it was actually a competition of acting skills. Elizabeth transformed into a bat and hung outside the door. The eye of magic could see her dim magic light. Until List put on the mithril armor, Elizabeth did not escape. He looked at the viscous blood on the table and suddenly thought of something. He quietly put the blood into the gem space. The gem space could not contain living things as it would destroy the soul, but it had no problem maintaining the physical body. This blob of blood clearly did not have a soul, so it should be fine to put it in. As for what to do if there was a problem, he hadn't thought about it yet. It was just a flash of inspiration. However, the result was good. Elizabeth had no problems. When she saw him coming out, she let out a soft shriek and signaled for List to follow her. List remained unmoved. Instead, he had the retainer knight bring a pen and paper and wrote a simple letter. "Give it to Captain Marcus and have him deliver it to my father." After sending away the retainer knight and bringing the chocobo Loki, he signaled Elizabeth to set off. Elizabeth was stunned. She did not know why List wrote the letter, but she did not ask. Instead, she flapped her wings and flew into the night. List rode on Loki and followed behind the bat, flying into the night. After flying for about half an hour, the bat landed. She transformed back into a female vampire and gasped, "Without blood, my magic is almost exhausted. I hope Lord Viscount can protect me in the battle." "No problem. By the way, did Lord Viscount just write to your father, the Sea Wave Sword Saint?" List looked at Elizabeth and said calmly, "Just to tell my father that if I am ambushed and do not return after midnight, he should immediately tell the eldest prince about the vampires lurking on Ironhoof Island. I believe the eldest prince will be very interested in vampires like you." Elizabeth opened her mouth and sighed. "Lord Viscount is really cautious. You have the Dragon Knight behind you, and you are also involved in the dragon-slaying incident, so you can't be too careful." "Well, don't talk nonsense, hurry up and lure Tubert out. After killing him, I have to go back and take a bath." This was another forest. The moon hung high in the sky, and the hazy moonlight made the forest look gloomy. The surroundings were filled with shadows that blended into the darkness, and coupled with the rustling sound of the wind blowing the leaves, it was particularly terrifying. List, who was hiding on the side, was constantly using magic eyes and keenly observing the surroundings. He did not trust Elizabeth, so after Elizabeth chose a meeting place, he forcibly changed to another forest. Since they were all meeting in secret, of course he had to choose a place where it was impossible to set up an ambush so he could rest assured. At this moment, Elizabeth cast some kind of unknown blood magic. Then he quietly waited in place. 20 minutes later, List saw a string of red light flashing in the sky, and when the light became clear, he was surprised to find that it was a string of blood-red bats. The bats quickly flew in front of Elizabeth, circled around, and then combined into a tall man wearing a black mask and a red cloak. "Mary, you called me in such a hurry. Is it because the mission is completed?" The male vampire was obviously Tubert Black Knight, and his voice was very hoarse. "I'm sorry, Lord Tubert, the mission failed, and I was also seriously injured by List, but I barely escaped," Elizabeth replied weakly. This was a well-established routine, using the shock of the mission failure to divert Tubert's attention, thus creating an opportunity for List to attack. However, at this moment List did not come out because he heard Tubert actually call Elizabeth Mary. He did not know which was her real name, and it seemed that this female vampire had been lying to him, or perhaps Mary was the reward of the smoke mission, Bloody Mary. In the next moment, Tubert had already slapped Elizabeth's face, causing her to fall to the ground. "Useless. You can't even do such a small thing properly." "Ah!" Elizabeth screamed. This was obviously a reminder to List that it was time to act. List thought for a while, but in the end he decided to kill Tubert first. No matter what tricks he had up his sleeve, it was a joke in front of his unfathomable strength as a half-step dragon knight. No one knew how strong he really was, and even if he had a plot, it would be aimed at the ordinary Sky Knight List, not the Dragon Knight List. Boom! Suddenly, List rushed out of the thicket, heading straight for Tubert. Imbued with a large amount of dragon's fighting energy, he had already used the Scorching Sun Stab. The dragon's fighting energy turned into flames, and instantly pierced Tubert, who had not yet recovered from his shock. Under the attack of the Dragon Knight, no matter how fast the vampire's reaction was, it was still slow. You're tuning in to the Legend of the Vagabond YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.